Welcome to Calming Bedtime Journeys channel. Tonight we step through the winter darkness of the year 1215 toward Windsor Castle, where stone walls rise above a frozen bend of the Thames. What did cold feel like before glass windows? Central heating or dry boots? How did cooks, guards, servants, priests, horses, and noble guests endure a season when every breath smoked in the air? You see the fortress ahead, dim beneath a low sky, its towers watching over fields glazed white with frost. Somewhere inside, fires crackle, dogs stir, and tired hands prepare for another bitter night. Yet the castle is not merely a royal refuge, it is a living machine, crowded with people whose comfort depends upon rank, labour, fuel, food and luck. So before you settle into the story, take a second to like the video and hit subscribe and tell us in the comments where you are listening from, along with your local time. Now, dim the lights and let the road beneath your feet harden into frozen earth. You walk westward through a landscape held tightly by winter. The fields lie pale and silent beneath thin snow, while hedges stand black against the evening. Your boots press into old wagon ruts, each ridge stiffened by ice. The air tastes metallic, and your cheeks sting whenever the wind turns toward you. Far away, a crow calls once, then disappears into the grey. Windsor Castle rises slowly above the river valley. It is already an important royal stronghold, though not yet the Grand Palace later centuries will know. William the Conqueror established the first castle here after 1066, choosing the height for control and visibility. By 1215, timber buildings still mingle with newer stone defences. The place feels less polished than powerful. You notice the castle before you reach its gates because smoke hangs over it. Thin columns rise from kitchens, halls, workshops, and chambers, then flatten under the cold sky. The smell reaches you next. There is wood smoke, damp wool, horse sweat, ash, and something richly greasy from distant cooking fires. Civilization, medieval style, announces itself through the nose. The winter has been hard, snow has crusted along the shaded road, and shallow pools have become dull mirrors of ice. Villagers passing in the opposite direction keep their heads lowered. Their cloaks are patched, their hands tucked beneath their arms. Nobody wastes warmth on elegant gestures. You hear rumours as you travel. King John has sealed Magna Carta at Runnymede earlier that year. Not far from here, peace already feels fragile. Their horses arrive foaming, their faces raw from wind. Guards watch roads carefully, and officials count supplies with greater attention. A missing cartload of oats may mean hungry horses. Delayed bundle of arrows may trouble the captain. Even firewood becomes strategic when cold settles over stone walls. You pass a small cluster of buildings outside the castle's main defences. Craftsmen, labourers, traders, dependents live close to royal protection. Roofs sag beneath frost, and smoke escapes through holes rather than proper chimneys. Chickens scratch beside frozen dung heaps with admirable optimism. Medieval poultry, apparently, does not respect dramatic atmosphere. Children stare as you approach, then retreat behind a doorway. A woman beats snow from a rough blanket. Nearby, a man splits logs with slow, economical strokes. Each strike sounds sharp in the cold. The rhythm carries across the settlement like a wooden clock. You pause beside the road and look upward. The castle's central mound dominates the site, with defensive enclosures spreading around it. Historians still argue whether every part of Windsor's early 13th century layout can be reconstructed with confidence. Later rebuilding altered walls, gates, towers, and domestic spaces. What you see must therefore remain partly under routine, shaped by archaeology, records, and informed imagination. Still, Windsor is crowded, guarded, smoky, and cold. The wind slides under your cloak. Wool helps, especially when laced, but winter clothing is rarely light or perfectly dry. Linen sits against the skin, with wool above it, and perhaps fur for those wealthy enough. Poorer travellers depend on thick cloth, leather, and repeated repairs. Wet fabric can become a quiet enemy. A mounted servant passes you, leading a second horse burdened with sacks. The animal's breath forms clouds around their bridles. Their hooves strike sparks from frozen stones. Grain, salt, candles, wine, dried fish, and firewood must reach the castle despite mud, frost, and politic. A fortress cannot eat its walls. One quirky belief whispers through the household world you are approaching. Some people think certain woods burn with particular virtues or dangers. Holly, ash, oak, and thorn may gather practical reputations beside older superstitions. A crack in the fire can become an omen when nights are long enough. Cold encourages imagination. You continue uphill as daylight thins. The road steepens near the defences, forcing carts to slow. Wheels grind against frozen ground. Drivers curse under their breath, though politely enough when royal officials stand nearby. The castle now fills your view. Timber hoardings project from sections of wall, and narrow openings watch the approach. Banners hang stiffly rather than fluttering. You sense many eyes above, though only a few faces are visible. A guard calls down to an approaching cart. Questions follow about ownership, cargo, and destination. The exchange is routine, yet the tone is alert. In 1215, loyalty cannot be assumed merely because someone claims noble service. Seals, names, witnesses, and recognizable servants matter greatly. You join a small group waiting below the M. A clerk holds a leather case close to his chest. Two labourers carry bundled reeds. A priest warms his fingers with his breath. Nobody speaks much. Cold makes strangers practical. The moat or ditch below the defences looks darker than the road. Ice gathers in shallow places, though not enough to trust. Defensive earthworks remain useful even when frozen. A slippery descent can slow attackers, horses, and clumsy officials equally. Medieval engineering does not discriminate. From within comes a muffled bell. It may mark prayer, duty, or the passing of an hour measured less precisely than yours. The sound settles over the walls and fades into the valley. Then the gate opens wider. Warmth does not rush out. That would be far too generous. Instead, you receive a thicker blend of smoke, animals, food, and human closeness. The scent is almost welcoming after the empty road. Almost. You step forward beneath heavy timber and ironwork. Above you, beams creak as wind presses against the structure. Your gloved hand brushes rough wood, damp at the edges and scarred by years of use. Voices echo beyond the passage. Behind you, the winter landscape darkens beside the Thames. Ahead, Windsor Castle breathes like a vast sleeping creature, restless beneath its stone skin. You have crossed from open cold into guarded cold, which is considered progress. The gate closes slowly after the last cart. Chains tighten. Wood strikes wood with a deep final sound. You are inside. The gate closes behind you, and the sound travels through the passage like distant thunder. For a moment, you stand between worlds. Outside lies the frozen road, pale fields, and the exposed river valley. Inside lies a narrow throat of timber, stone, iron, smoke, and watchful men. You move slowly beneath the gatehouse. The floor is uneven, polished by boots, hooves, wheels, and years of hurried traffic. Melted snow has gathered in shallow hollows, then frozen again into cloudy patches. Your heel slips slightly. A guard notices, but kindly decides not to enjoy it aloud. The passage smells of wet leather, lamp oil, cold stone, and horses recently led through. Above you, unseen mechanisms creak. Heavy doors can be barred with thick beams, while gates may be reinforced with iron fittings. In an emergency, defenders can close this entrance quickly and turn it into a trap for anyone caught between barriers. Windsor's defences in 1215 are not identical to the towers and walls visible in later centuries. The castle has changed repeatedly since its Norman foundation. Stone is replacing timber in important areas, yet older wooden structures still remain useful. Medieval builders rarely discard something merely because future tourists might prefer architectural consistency. You glance upward through a slit in the wall, only a slice of grey sky appears. Narrow openings help defenders observe the approach while exposing little of themselves. They also admit very little light, which makes the interior dim even before sunset. A small flame burns nearby, trembling whenever a gust enters. The guard at the inner end asks your business. His wool cloak looks thick, but his nose is red and his fingers move constantly. He carries a spear, a practical weapon for controlling distance in a confined space. A sword hangs at his side, though drawing it here would require care and perhaps an apology. You give your answer, and another man studies you. Medieval castles depend upon recognition, reputation, seals, and spoken authority. Documents exist, but paperwork alone cannot guarantee entry. A familiar servant may be trusted more readily than a stranger carrying an impressive letter. A mainstream fact of castle life becomes obvious here. Gates are not merely openings in walls, they are controlled checkpoints where movement, trade, military readiness, and royal authority meet. Every visitor passes through a system designed to slow, examine, and, when necessary, stop them. You step beyond the covered passage but remain close to the outer defences. Wind moves along the wall and catches your cloak. The air inside the perimeter is less exposed than the road, yet hardly gentle. Stone blocks hold the cold with impressive dedication. Touching one feels like pressing your palm against winter itself. A sentry walks above along the wall path. His boots strike a steady rhythm against timber and stone. He pauses at intervals to look outward, searching for movement on the roads and fields. The work appears simple until you imagine doing it for hours, with numb feet and darkness gathering. The ditch below the wall remains part of the defensive plan. Some castle ditches are dry, while others may hold water depending on terrain. Engineering and season at Windsor. The steep slopes and earthworks strengthen the elevated position. Attackers must climb while defenders watch from above. Scholars continue to debate exactly which sections of wall, gate and tower were complete at Windsor during the winter of 1215. Royal building records offer valuable clues, but they do not create a perfect map. Later construction covered, altered, or erased earlier features. The fortress you enter therefore contains several layers of informed uncertainty. One soldier rubs wax or grease into a leather fitting, another checks a shield rim for damage. Their breath drifts around them in soft clouds. You hear the scrape of a knife, the knock of wood, and the quiet complaint of someone whose glove has split at the thumb. A curious tidbit travels among guards in many medieval places. Some believe that a castle dog, goose, or even peacock can serve as an alarm better than a sleepy man. Geese are especially difficult to bribe with charming conversation. Whether Windsor relies on such creatures tonight is uncertain, but the idea is entirely practical. From farther along the enclosure comes a sudden barking. The sentry looks toward it, listens, then relaxes. Probably a cart, stranger, or an animal disapproving of weather. Castles are full of warnings that turn out to be ordinary life. You follow a guard along the inner side of the wall. Wooden stairs rise toward the fighting platform. Frost clings to shaded edges, making each step dangerous. The guard places his feet carefully and advises you to do the same. The view explains Windsor's location. From this height, watchers can observe movement across the surrounding landscape. The castle also stands near routes connecting London with western royal lands. Control of this position brings military, administrative, and symbolic value. Yet visibility works both ways. Anyone approaching can see the fortress dominating the horizon. The walls communicate authority long before a royal officer speaks. Stone becomes a language. Height becomes a warning. You rest one hand on the cold parapet. The surface is rough, with tiny grains pressing through your glove. Below, labourers move near stacks of timber. A mule shakes its harness, producing a brief metallic jingle. Smoke drifts across the enclosure and stings your eyes. The sentry beside you scans the road. He does not know whether rebellion will bring armed men towards these walls. Magna Carta has failed to settle the conflict between King John and his opponents. Trust is thinning, and castles are becoming increasingly important. Still, most hours contain no attack, they contain waiting. That may be the hardest part. You stand in cold air, listening for a danger that might never come. Every distant hoofbeat deserves attention. Every unusual light may carry meaning. Boredom and fear sit beside each other like unfriendly companions. The sentry stamps his feet. You hear the dull thud through the walkway. He tells you that cold enters through the soles first. Whether this is medically precise matters less than how true it feels. You descend again, gripping the rail where many hands have smoothed the wood. The air grows slightly calmer below, near the gatehouse. Another shift prepares to take over. Names are exchanged, orders repeated, and small details passed from one man to the next. A lantern is trimmed, a bar is tested, hinges are checked. Nothing feels dramatic, everything matters. You look back toward the closed gate, now sealed against the deepening night. Beyond it, the road has vanished into winter shadow. Within it, the castle's first line of life continues through routine, vigilance, and stubborn endurance. Then you turn toward the crowded spaces beyond the defences, where voices, animals, and smoke gather more thickly. The fortress has admitted you, but it has not yet revealed how many lives are pressed inside its walls. You turn away from the gatehouse and enter the lower ward, where the castle suddenly feels less like a monument and more like a crowded village. The open space is busy despite the fading light. Men carry bundles across the yard, servants hurry between doorways, and animals shift impatiently beside carts. Smoke hangs low beneath the winter sky, softening the outlines of roofs and walls. The ground beneath you is a difficult mixture of frozen mud, straw, ash, and trampled snow. Some patches are hard enough to jar your ankles, others have softened near fires and doorways, where warmth and traffic create slick brown slush. Each step requires attention. Dignity, once again, is a luxury item. You hear many sounds at once. A hammer strikes iron from somewhere beyond a wooden shed. Harness rings knock together near the stables. Chickens complain beneath a cart, while a groom shouts at a horse refusing to move. Above everything rises the steady murmur of human work. The lower ward serves practical needs: storage buildings, workshops, lodging spaces, service areas, and military activity gather within this defended enclosure. The exact arrangement changes across centuries, and the Windsor of 1215 cannot be mapped with perfect certainty, yet its purpose is clear. This is where the castle feeds itself, repairs itself, houses workers, and prepares for trouble. You pass a cart loaded with split timber. The wheels are crusted with frozen earth, and one axle squeals at every turn. Two labourers lean their shoulders against the rear to help the horse. Their wool tunics are dark with sweat despite the cold. Steam rises faintly from their backs. A clerk stands nearby with a wax tablet, counting bundles as they arrive. His fingers look stiff, and he keeps flexing them between marks. Records matter because a royal household consumes enormous quantities of food: fuel, fodder, candles, cloth, and drink. Supplies vanish quickly when many people depend upon them. The clerk argues with a carter about missing logs. The carter blames the road, the weather, and possibly divine displeasure. The clerk prefers numbers. Neither seems likely to win. You move closer to a row of service buildings. Their walls may be timber, stone, or a combination shaped by age and purpose. Roofs wear a thin white crust. Smoke escapes through vents and gaps, carrying the smells of charcoal, boiled grain, tallow, damp hay, and roasting fat. The warmth near one doorway touches your face briefly, then the door closes. Winter returns at once. A group of boys carries baskets toward a storehouse. They are likely pages, servants, apprentices, or household dependents learning through labour. Childhood in such a place is not separated neatly from work. Young people fetch, clean, carry, watch, and remember. Their education often begins with cold hands and repeated errands. One boy stumbles, spilling onions across the yard. The bulbs roll into ruts and beneath boots. Several workers help gather them, though one onion disappears under a dog. The dog looks innocent in the highly practiced manner of dogs throughout history. You continue past stacked barrels protected beneath a lean roof. Some may hold ale, wine, salted foods, or other valuable stores. Barrels make transport and storage easier, though their contents require careful supervision. Leakage, spoilage, theft, and inaccurate measures can all trouble household officers. A mainstream truth of medieval castle life becomes impossible to ignore. The fortress depends upon labour far more than glamour. Every warm chamber requires someone to cut, carry, and arrange fuel. Every meal requires grinding, baking, boiling, hauling, cleaning, and accounting. The noble household rests upon hundreds of ordinary movements. You feel those movements around you. A woman hurries past with folded linen held against her chest. A groom carries a bucket whose water trembles near the rim. Two soldiers drag a damaged bench toward a workshop. Nobody appears idle for long. The air changes as you approach the animal spaces. Horse sweat, dung, leather, and hay overpower the smoke. The scent is heavy but not surprising to those living here. Horses are essential for travel, communication, war, hunting, hauling, and status. Their care continues regardless of weather. Inside one stable entrance, darkness gathers around shifting bodies. Hooves scrape packed earth. A horse snorts, sending warm breath into the cold air. You hear a groom brushing a coat with slow, firm strokes. The sound resembles a stiff broom passing over cloth. Hay must remain dry, which winter does not always allow easily. Damp fodder spoils, and sick animals weaken the entire household. Grooms inspect feed. Hooves, tack, and temperament. A nervous horse in a cramped yard can rearrange everyone's evening with remarkable speed. One unusual belief concerns horses and protective charms. Some medieval handlers hang small objects, herbs, or symbols near stalls to discourage illness or bad fortune. Practical care and superstition often share the same hook. A groom may clean a hoof carefully, then trust a charm to manage whatever remains. Researchers disagree about the precise number of people and animals living inside Windsor at any single moment during this winter. Royal movements, military needs, seasonal supply patterns, and political tension could alter the population quickly. The castle might swell with visitors, messengers, soldiers, and servants, then thin again after departures. Even without exact numbers, the crowd feels dense. Bodies occupy doorways, paths, sheds, lofts, and corners. Privacy is scarce, silence is rarer. You pass a smithy where orange light pulses against the dusk. The forge gives off a fierce, localized heat. A smith bends over metal while an assistant works the bellows. Sparks leap upward, brilliant and brief, before vanishing into the smoky air. The heat draws people close, though they cannot remain without obstructing work. A soldier waits with a damaged buckle. A servant holds a pot needing repair. Iron tools, nails, hinges, horseshoes, fittings, and weapons all require attention. In a fortified household, broken metal is never merely inconvenient. The hammer falls again. The sound travels cleanly, you feel it through your chest. Nearby, a carpenter examines a cracked shaft beneath a covered workspace. Wood remains indispensable, even as stone defences grow more important. Doors, roofs, carts, ladders, furniture, handles, scaffolding, fencing, and countless smaller objects depend upon skilled hands. A castle without carpenters soon becomes a collection of expensive problems. The light fades further. Servants begin carrying lamps and rushlights between buildings. Their flames bend in the wind, surrounded by small halos of smoke. Illumination is limited, costly and fragile. Darkness does not stop labour, but it makes every task slower. A bell sounds from deeper within the castle. Several people glance up, judging duty, prayer, mealtime, or changing watches. Medieval time is measured through bells, daylight, custom, and repeated routine. Few people need a precise minute. They need to know what comes next. What comes next is more carrying. A kitchen servant passes with a basket of turnips. Another follows with kindling. A third carries nothing, yet walks quickly enough to suggest an important mission. This may be the oldest administrative technique in human society. You stand near the centre of the ward and let the atmosphere settle around you. Smoke roughens your throat. Cold presses through your boots, somewhere. Broth bubbles inside a kitchen building, somewhere else. Someone laughs, coughs, swears softly, or sings part of a tune. The castle does not sleep when darkness arrives, it changes pace. Work moves indoors where possible. Animals are secured, tools are counted, doors are fastened, fires are fed. Guards take their places while servants prepare chambers for those who will never know every hand involved. You follow the smell of wood smoke toward the domestic buildings. Behind those walls, the struggle against winter becomes more intimate. Stone may defend the body from arrows, but it offers little kindness against cold. You follow the smoke toward the domestic buildings, where the wind loses some of its force. The change is small, but your body notices it immediately. Walls block the sharpest gusts, roofs hold back the falling frost, and doorways promise heat that may or may not exist. A servant lifts a wooden latch and ushers you inside. The chamber beyond is dim, crowded, and warmer than the yard, though only by comparison. Cold still lingers near the floor. It gathers in corners, creeps beneath doors, and settles against the stone with patient determination. Your first sensation is smell. Damp wool hangs close to the walls, mixed with smoke, rushes, wax, old wood, and human breath. A faint trace of herbs rises from the floor covering. Someone has scattered dried plants among the rushes, hoping to sweeten a room occupied by too many bodies. The floor feels uneven beneath your boots. Layers of rushes soften the boards or packed surface. Depending on the room, fresh rushes may help with insulation and cleanliness, but replacement requires labour and supply. Old layers can trap crumbs, dirt, insects, and whatever else a busy household drops without ceremony. You step closer to the hearth. Flames lick around split logs, throwing restless light across the room. Heat touches your face while your back remains cold. This is the common arrangement. A medieval fire warms unevenly, creating small islands of comfort surrounded by draughts. One firmly established feature of elite medieval interiors is the use of wall hangings. Heavy textiles reduce some heat loss, soften echoes, and make stone chambers feel less severe. They also display wealth, taste, and political identity. A bare wall declares function. A richly covered wall declares status. Here, the hanging is thick but not luxurious. It carries a faded pattern you cannot fully read in the firelight. When you brush it with your fingers, the fabric feels rough and slightly greasy from years of smoke. Behind it, the stone remains bitterly cold. Windows create another problem. Glass is expensive and uncommon in many domestic spaces, especially outside the most prestigious rooms. Openings may be closed with wooden shutters, cloth, parchment, or horn panels. Each solution admits some light, but few offer perfect protection from winter air. A servant presses folded cloth into a gap beside a shutter. The wind has found a narrow opening and whistles through it. He mutters at the frame, then wedges the cloth more tightly. The sound fades to a thin sigh. That counts as success. The room's furniture is practical and movable. A chest stands against one wall, serving as storage and perhaps as a seat. Benches line the hearth. A trestle table can be assembled when needed, then taken apart to clear space. Beds, when present, are important pieces of equipment rather than private retreats. You approach one such bed in a smaller chamber. Curtains surround the wooden frame, creating a protected pocket of air. Thick bedding lies piled beneath a coverlet. Linen sheets, woolen blankets, fur linings, and stuffed mattresses provide warmth according to wealth and availability. The bed curtain is not merely decorative, it blocks drafts, preserves some body heat, and offers a degree of privacy. In a castle where servants, relatives, attendants, and guests move constantly, privacy is often something made from cloth. A less familiar winter practice involves warming bedding before use. Heated stones, wrapped bricks, or metal warming vessels can sometimes be placed beneath covers. Though exact methods vary by period and household, such comforts demand caution. A scorched blanket is memorable for all the wrong reasons. The evidence for every detail of sleeping arrangements at Windsor in 1215 remains incomplete. Inventories, household records, archaeological findings, and comparisons with other royal sites offer guidance. Yet later rebuilding erased much of the domestic world you now imagine. Some historians place greater confidence in the existence of richly furnished royal chambers. Others emphasize how temporary, adaptable, and crowded these spaces may have been. Both views can be true in different rooms. A king's sleeping chamber and a servant's corner belong to the same castle, but not the same experience. You move into a passage where the temperature drops sharply. There is no hearth here, only cold air slipping through joints and doorways. Torches or lamps offer light, but very little warmth. Your breath becomes visible again. A maid passes carrying folded blankets. The stack reaches her chin, and she moves carefully to keep the lower edges from brushing the dirty floor. The cloth smells of smoke, lye, and storage. Washing in winter is difficult. Drying is slow, and damp fabric can become dangerous. Rooms are often used flexibly. A chamber may serve for sleeping, conversation, dressing, business, or private dining. Servants transform spaces through furniture, hangings, screens, and bedding. The castle's interior is less fixed than a modern house. You enter a larger hall where the ceiling disappears into darkness. The fire is stronger here, but so is the volume of air. Smoke rises toward the roof, not always escaping efficiently. Your eyes sting, and a cough moves through the gathered servants like a reluctant wave. The hall provides social warmth as much as physical heat. People sit close together, share benches, exchange news, and gather around light. Human bodies contribute warmth. So do dogs resting beneath tables, although their assistance comes with a certain aroma. A hound lifts its head as you pass. Its fur is damp near the paws. The animal watches you briefly, decides you are unimportant, and returns to sleep beside the hearth. Close sleeping arrangements are common among servants and retainers. Sharing a bed or sleeping space may be practical rather than intimate. Bedding is valuable, rooms are limited, and warmth improves when bodies remain close. Solitude is rarely the first priority during a freezing night. You notice a wooden screen near the lower end of the hall. Screens help interrupt drafts and divide activity. Curtains may serve the same purpose in chambers. Even a modest barrier can change how cold air moves through a room. The household fights winter through hundreds of small decisions. A shutter is repaired, a curtain is drawn, a bench is moved nearer the fire, a damp cloak is hung where smoke can dry it. None of these acts defeats the cold completely. Together, they make endurance possible. Another servant enters carrying a brazier filled with glowing charcoal. Portable braziers can bring warmth into certain spaces, but they also create smoke and dangerous fumes. Medieval people may not understand invisible gases, yet experience teaches caution. A room that grows too still can become heavy, dizzying, and unsafe. You feel the atmosphere thicken as the brazier is set down. Warmth spreads gently around it. The metal gives a faint ticking sound while it expands. Someone opens the door for a moment, allowing fresh air inside and much of the precious heat outside. Comfort always negotiates with survival. You return to the hearth and extend your hands toward the flames. The skin on your fingers begins to ache as warmth returns. Behind you, cloth rustles, logs settle, and a shutter taps faintly against its frame. Outside, frost tightens over the lower ward. Inside, people build temporary pockets of shelter using fabric, fire, furniture, and shared breath. Stone keeps enemies away, but warmth comes from softer things. Soon, however, each flame will require more fuel. Every glowing chamber depends upon wood cut beyond these walls, hauled uphill, counted, guarded, and burned carefully. The comfort around you is already becoming tomorrow's shortage. You remain beside the hearth as one of the logs collapses inward. Sparks rise, glow briefly, and vanish above the flames. The room changes at once. Heat weakens near your hands, while the cold behind your shoulders seems to move closer. A servant notices before anyone else. He kneels, pushes the embers together, and adds a smaller piece of wood. The new log is not wasted on spectacle. It is placed carefully, where the coals can catch its dry edge without smothering the fire. Fuel demands attention. Every flame inside Windsor depends upon work performed beyond the castle walls. Trees must be selected, cut, trimmed, split, bundled, transported, stored, and rationed. Each stage becomes harder during winter. Frozen roads slow carts, snow hides hazards, and damp timber burns badly. You follow the servant through a side passage into the cold yard. The warmth leaves your clothing almost immediately. Night has deepened, and frost now is silvering every exposed surface reflects the weak lantern light. Your boots crunch over frozen straw. Ahead, a covered timber store stands close to several service buildings. Its roof protects the best firewood from snow and rain. The sides remain partly open, allowing air to move through stacked logs. Drying matters, because wet wood produces more smoke and less useful heat. A household this large consumes astonishing quantities of fuel. Kitchens require steady fires for baking, boiling, roasting, and heating water. Halls and chambers need warmth and light. Workshops may demand charcoal or concentrated heat for metalworking. Even religious spaces depend upon candles, lamps, and occasional braziers. The servant lifts a log from the pile and checks its weight. Dry wood feels lighter. He strikes it against another piece and listens to the sound. A clear knock suggests better seasoning, while a dull note may reveal trapped moisture. You copy the gesture. The log is rough beneath your gloves, with bark flaking along one side. Resin clings faintly to the cut surface when you lift it. The weight pulls at your arms more than expected. The servant smiles. 1 log feels manageable, 50 do not. Bundles of smaller sticks rest nearby. Kindling is precious because large logs cannot begin burning by themselves. Dry twigs, bark, shavings, and split slivers help coax flame from embers. Poor households often gather almost anything combustible, including brushwood, peat, crop waste, or dried dung where local conditions allow. Royal Windsor has greater resources, but it also has greater appetite. Status does not reduce consumption. It usually improves the quality of what gets consumed. Woodlands surrounding royal estates may provide timber and fuel under controlled rights. Forest law protects hunting grounds and regulates access to resources, often causing resentment among local people. A fallen branch that seems harmless to a hungry villager may still belong, legally, to someone far more comfortable. The politics of firewood can become surprisingly serious. Rights to gather deadwood, cut coppice, or collect undergrowth affect survival through winter. Villagers may rely upon customary access, while officials defend royal privilege, somewhere between law and necessity. Many branches change ownership quietly. You walk toward a stack of longer timbers. These pieces are not intended for immediate burning. They may be reserved for repairs, scaffolding, carts, roofing, or defensive work. A castle cannot feed every piece of wood to the hearth, even when the air bites. That distinction requires discipline. A beautifully straight beam may burn wonderfully, but replacing it could take months or years. Household officers must decide what can become fuel and what must remain material. One old winter belief claims that certain woods produce different moods in a room. Applewood may be praised for sweetness, while resinous wood snaps and throws sparks. Some people distrust elder, thorn, or other trees linked with folklore. Practical experience and superstition often arrive together, carrying the same bundle. The surviving records do not reveal exactly how Windsor's winter fuel was divided among every chamber in 1215. Accounts may list purchases, deliveries, or payments, yet daily distribution leaves fewer traces. Researchers therefore reconstruct the system from scattered evidence and comparison with other royal households. You can imagine the arguments without documentation. A noble guest complains that his chamber is cold. A clerk notes that the wood allowance has already been delivered. A servant insists the logs were damp. Someone blames the carter. The carter, safely elsewhere, blames the weather, near the storehouse. Two labourers unload split logs from a cart. Their hands move slowly from fatigue. Each piece lands with a heavy knock, releasing the smell of fresh sap and cold bark. The horse stands under a rough blanket, breathing clouds into the lantern glow. Transport is often the most difficult part. A woodland may contain abundant fuel, yet distance transforms abundance into expense. Carts need animals, drivers, wheels, repairs, and passable roads. Snow can smooth rough ground, but thawing mud may swallow wheels almost to the axle. River transport sometimes offers advantages for heavy loads. Windsor's position near the Thames connects it with wider networks of movement. Still, the precise routes used for every winter delivery remain uncertain. Water, road, and local collection may all contribute. You help lift another log. The bark scrapes your sleeve, leaving dust and fragments behind. Your shoulders begin to ache. Cold air enters deeply with every breath, making your chest feel raw. The labourers continue without pause. They understand that storage must remain organised. Dry wood should not be buried beneath damp deliveries. Smaller fuel needs separate handling. Valuable timber must stay distinct from ordinary firewood. Confusion wastes heat, and winter punishes waste quickly. A watchman passes between the stacks. Fuel is worth guarding. Theft may occur among servants, townspeople, soldiers, or anyone with a freezing room and flexible conscience. A single armful seems small until many people think the same way. Charcoal receives even closer attention. It burns hotter and cleaner than ordinary wood, making it useful for smithing and certain indoor braziers. Producing it requires carefully controlled burning, usually in covered heaps or kilns. The process sacrifices volume for concentrated fuel. You catch the faint, dry scent of charcoal near a sealed container. It smells sharper than ordinary ash. Black dust marks the lid and the watchman's fingers. Uis. He wipes his hand on his cloak. improving neither object, returning toward the domestic buildings. You notice how many fires glow across the castle. Kitchen light spills beneath the doorway. A brazier reddens the corner of a guard room. High above, a chamber window shows a faint orange shimmer behind a shutter. Each light consumes the landscape. That thought follows you indoors. The servant places fresh logs beside the hearth, arranging them according to size. He does not feed all of them into the flames. Tomorrow exists, and tomorrow will also be cold. The fire crackles softly. Smoke curls upward and settles beneath the dark roof. You hold your hands near the heat again, now understanding its hidden cost. Warmth feels different when you have carried it. A glowing room may appear comfortable, almost peaceful, but its peace rests upon axes, carts, forests, ledgers, aching backs, and guarded stores. The castle survives winter because countless people keep moving fuel toward flame. Across the yard, the kitchen fires burn brighter than any chamber hearth. Their demands are greater, their smoke heavier, and their purpose more urgent. Beyond those doors, grain, meat, pots, and labour wait to become the next day's food. You turn toward that stronger glow. You turn toward the brighter kitchen glow, following the smell of smoke, yeast, onions, and hot grain. The door opens, and a wave of dense warmth rolls over your face. For several breaths, the heat feels luxurious. Then your eyes begin watering. The kitchen is alive with movement. Servants cross between tables, ovens, hearths, and storage chests. Wooden bowls knock against benches. Iron hooks creak beneath hanging pots somewhere near the wall. A cook shouts for more water, while someone else insists it was already brought. The floor is gritty beneath your boots. Ash, flour, straw, grease, and damp footprints combine into a surface no royal architect would proudly display. A scullion scrapes at one patch with a wooden tool. Progress appears slow. Near the centre, a broad hearth throws heat across several workstations. Pots hang at different heights, allowing cooks to control how fiercely their contents boil. A smaller vessel simmers near the edge. Where the heat is gentler, its surface trembles with barley, herbs, and fragments of onion. Bread is the foundation of daily eating for much of medieval society. Rank changes the grain, texture, colour, and quantity, but few tables ignore it. Wheat bread may serve wealthier diners, while mixed grains, rye, barley, or oats support others. The castle household therefore depends heavily upon flour. You move toward a long table dusted white. A baker presses both hands into a mound of dough. His sleeves are rolled above the wrists, and flour clings to his forearms like pale frost. Each push folds the dough inward, building strength through patient repetition. The dough smells faintly sour. Medieval leavening often depends upon yeast from brewing or a piece of fermented dough saved from an earlier batch. The result varies with temperature, flour, water, and experience. A cold room slows rising, which makes winter baking especially troublesome. Here, warmth is carefully managed. Bowls rest near the even wall, where the air remains steady but not scorching. Cloths cover the dough, protecting it from drafts and kitchen debris. A baker lifts one corner, studies the surface, then covers it again. He trusts his fingers more than any clock. Timing comes through habit. The spring of the dough matters. The heat against the cheek matters. The colour of the oven wall matters. Skilled workers read these signals quietly, often while less skilled people offer advice from a safe distance. A servant pours grain into a wooden trough for inspection. Small stones, husks, insects, and spoiled kernels must be removed before milling. Even carefully stored grain can suffer from damp, rodents, mould, or theft. Winter scarcity makes every loss more painful. You reach into the grain. The kernels feel cool and dry against your palm. They make a soft rushing sound as you let them fall. That sound is reassuring. Damp grain clumps, smell stale, and may threaten the household's future meals. Castle stores are counted because bread production must continue regardless of weather. Grain can arrive as whole kernels or prepared flour, depending upon local arrangements. Mills may be powered by water, animals, or wind, although water mills are especially important in medieval England. Flour arrives with its own problems. It spoils more quickly than whole grain and absorbs moisture easily. Storekeepers protect sacks from walls and floors, where damp gathers. They also watch for mice, which show no respect for royal ownership. A cat slips beneath the table as though summoned by the thought. It pauses beside a sack, listening with complete seriousness. Then it pounces into a shadow and emerges with nothing but offended dignity. The kitchen accepts this outcome. One curious household habit involves marking loaves before baking. Cuts, stamps, or distinctive shapes may identify batches, bakers, qualities, or intended recipients. A loaf is not always merely a loaf. It may carry information about rank, ration, or responsibility. You watch a worker divide dough into portions. Larger loaves are weighed or judged with practiced hands in regulated towns. Bread size may change with grain prices, allowing the cost to remain stable while the loaf grows smaller. Within a royal household, allowances and hierarchy shape distribution differently. The finest bread is pale, sifted, and labour-intensive. Coarser bread contains more bran and may be darker, denser, and more filling. Servants do not necessarily eat the same bread placed before high-ranking diners. Medieval tables make social distinctions visible even in crumbs. Some uncertainty remains about how consistently different grades were separated at Windsor during this particular winter. Household ordinances from other years and places reveal structured allowances, yet daily practice could bend under shortage. Surviving documents show systems more clearly than exceptions. You can imagine the exceptions easily. A delayed grain cart arrives after dark. Flour has become damp. Guests appear without warning. A baker burns one batch, then insists the oven behaved strangely. Hierarchy remains firm until hunger enters the room. The oven stands like a dark mouth in the wall. Its interior has been heated by burning wood directly inside, once the masonry grows hot enough. Embers and ash are raked away. Loaves are then placed on the heated surface, and the stored warmth bakes them. You feel the radiant heat before approaching closely. It presses against your skin with almost painful intensity. The baker tests the oven using experience, perhaps watching how quickly flour darkens or feeling the heat with an extended hand. Precision lives in the body. The first loaves slide inward on a long wooden peel. Their pale surfaces disappear into darkness. The baker works quickly, placing each one with enough space for expansion. A badly positioned loaf may attach itself to a neighbour, producing bread with an unwanted political alliance. Across the room, another group prepares pottage. This broad category includes thick soups or stews made from grains, vegetables, pulses, herbs, and sometimes meat. It can be humble, nourishing, adaptable, and endlessly reheated. The medieval household appreciates food that survives both appetite and scheduling. A cook stirs the pot with a paddle. Steam rises around his face, carrying the scent of leeks, pepper, and warm cereal. Spices are expensive, but royal kitchens have better access than ordinary homes. Even so, seasoning varies according to dish, status, supply, and fasting rules. You lean closer and feel moisture settle on your cheeks. The warmth is comforting, though smoke scratches your throat. Kitchen workers breathe this mixture for hours. Their clothing absorbs it, and their hair may smell of fire long after they leave. Bread also serves as tableware. Thick slices or slabs called trenchers can support portions of food, especially in elite dining, after use. They may be eaten, given to servants, distributed as alms, or discarded, depending upon condition and custom. The exact treatment of used trenchers differs across periods and households, despite confident stories repeated in later retellings. Records provide clues, but not every dining habit fits one tidy rule. Medieval life enjoys disappointing anyone seeking perfect consistency. A bell rings somewhere beyond the kitchen. Activity sharpens immediately. Baskets are lined with cloth. Finished loaves are counted. Bowls are lifted, wiped, and arranged for carrying. The household meal approaches, and delay will be noticed by people who did none of the baking. The oven opens again. A rich smell fills the room. Fresh bread carries warmth, grain, smoke, and a hint of sweetness. The crusts are browned and firm, while fine cracks run across their surfaces. For one quiet moment, nearly everyone looks toward them. You understand why bread carries religious, social, and emotional weight. It is ordinary, but never trivial. It connects fields, mills, ovens, warriors, prayers, and hunger. A failed harvest can change kingdoms. A successful loaf can calm a room. One baker taps the underside of a loaf and listens, satisfied. He places it with the others. The sound is hollow and crisp. Outside, the castle remains frozen. Inside, grain has become warmth you can hold. Yet bread alone does not define the household table. Nearby, salted meat hangs from hooks, fish waits in barrels, and religious rules shape what may be eaten tomorrow. The kitchen's next challenge is not simply feeding everyone, it is feeding each person correctly. You remain near the kitchen tables as servants begin arranging the next round of dishes. Bread has given the room its warm, familiar scent, but other smells now rise through the smoke. Salted pork, dried fish, onions, vinegar, and pepper gather in the air, each announcing a different part of the meal. A cook opens a barrel and reaches inside with both hands. The brine smells sharp enough to sting your nose. He lifts out a piece of preserved meat, pale beneath its coating of salt, then places it on a board for soaking and trimming. Fresh meat is valuable in winter, but preservation keeps a household alive between slaughtering days. Salting, smoking, drying, and storing in fat can extend the usefulness of animals killed earlier in the season. These methods do not make food delicate, they make it available. You watch a servant carry the meat toward a basin. Water will draw out some of the salt before cooking. Without soaking, the final dish may become nearly impossible to eat. Medieval preservation often solves one problem by creating another, which feels reassuringly human. Nearby, strips of bacon hang from wooden pegs. Their smoky scent clings to the rafters. A knife passes through one piece with a slow scraping sound. The fat is firm from the cold, almost waxy beneath the blade. Pigs are especially useful because they provide meat, fat, hide, and bristles. They can also forage through woodland when permitted, feeding on acorns and beech mast. That seasonal practice helps turn forest resources into winter food, though access remains tied to rights, dues, and local authority. The kitchen does not prepare identical portions for everyone. Rank influences quantity, quality, seasoning, and presentation. A noble guest may receive roasted meat or carefully prepared dishes, while servants eat pottage, bread, scraps, and simpler cuts. The same animal can travel through several social levels before disappearing entirely. You hear a knife strike bone against the chopping block. The sound is blunt and regular, softened by the surrounding voices. No one pauses. The work is ordinary here. A spit turns near the main hearth, though tonight it holds only a modest joint. Roasting demands fuel, attention, and suitable meat. Boiling or stewing can stretch ingredients further, especially when feeding many people. A pot accepts tough cuts, vegetables, grain, and patience without complaint. The person turning the spit stands close to fierce heat. His face shines with sweat while his back remains exposed to cold air. He shifts from foot to foot, adjusting his position whenever sparks rise. The task looks simple until you imagine repeating it for hours. Mechanical roasting devices powered by weights, dogs, or other systems become associated with later kitchens, though simple labour remains common for much of the medieval period. At Windsor in 1215, human attention would still be central. Someone must watch the fire, judge the pace, and prevent expensive food from burning. You move toward a preparation table where fish are being cleaned. Their skins reflect the firelight with a dull silver shine. The smell is colder than the meat, carrying river water, salt, and faint decay. Fish matters greatly because Christian fasting rules shape the calendar. On certain days and during particular seasons, meat from warm-blooded animals is restricted. Fish, however, remains acceptable under the prevailing religious logic. The result is a steady demand for river fish, coastal fish, shellfish, and preserved catches. The definition of fish can become surprisingly elastic. Medieval dietary thinking sometimes classifies aquatic animals according to habitat rather than modern biology. Creatures connected with water may be treated differently from land animals. Practical appetite occasionally finds theology very cooperative. One often repeated oddity concerns beavers, whose tails were sometimes regarded as fish-like in parts of medieval Europe. Whether anyone at Windsor serves such a dish this winter is doubtful. Still, the story reveals how classification could bend around custom, scarcity, and fasting. You watch a cook rub salt from a dried fish. Its flesh is stiff and fibrous. Before eating, it may require soaking, pounding, boiling, or combining with sauce. Preservation keeps it safe enough to store, but not necessarily pleasant enough to admire. Herring is especially important in medieval diets because it can be caught in great numbers and preserved for transport. Eels also appear frequently in English records, sometimes used for rents or payments. Their slippery abundance makes them valuable, though not universally beloved. A tub near the wall contains live fish in cold water. One stirs suddenly, disturbing the surface. The splash seems loud in the crowded kitchen. A servant covers the tub more securely and receives several opinions about how he should have done it earlier. Evidence from royal accounts shows that elite households consumed varied and costly foods, including spices, wine, meat, and fish. Yet reconstructing a specific menu for every day at Windsor remains difficult. Records may note purchases without revealing exact recipes, portions, or who received each dish. Some researchers interpret surviving accounts as signs of remarkable abundance. Others caution that royal households were mobile, irregular, and vulnerable to disrupted supply. A list of ingredients does not guarantee that every table enjoyed them equally. You can feel that uncertainty in the kitchen. The stores appear generous, but every item is being counted. Salted meat hangs securely. Fish barrels remain covered. The cook watches portions closely. Plenty and anxiety can occupy the same room. Religious observance adds another layer of planning. The kitchen staff must know which foods are allowed, which guests require special treatment, and which feast or fast approaches. A mistake may offend piety, hierarchy, or both. A clerk enters carrying instructions. He speaks quietly with the senior cook, pointing toward the fish and then the meat. The cook listens with a tired expression. Apparently, someone important has changed plans after preparations began. This is not welcomed. The meat returns towards storage while fish takes its place near the hearth. Servants rearrange pots, fetch onions, and adjust the order of service. No one asks whether the important person understands the inconvenience. That would introduce unnecessary comedy. Sauces help transform preserved food. Vinegar, wine, mustard, herbs, spices, breadcrumbs, and groundnuts can create sharp or rich accompaniments. They do more than hide age or salt, they express culinary skill and elite taste. A cook grinds pepper with another spice in a mortar. The pestle makes a steady circular sound. The aroma rises warm and pungent, almost floral beneath the smoke. Spices travel long distances and carry high cost, making their use a visible sign of wealth. Still, medieval food is not uniformly overloaded with spice. Recipes vary and expensive seasonings are used with purpose. Modern assumptions often exaggerate their role as disguises for spoiled meat. A royal kitchen has strong reasons to avoid poisoning its employers. You stand beside a simmering fish stew. Steam touches your face, carrying parsley, onion, and something sour. The liquid bubbles gently around pale pieces of flesh. A cook skims the surface with a wooden spoon. Behind you, servants prepare separate bowls. Larger portions will travel upward toward higher tables. Simpler servings remain for household workers. Bones, skin, broth, and scraps may continue downward through the castle's social order. Nothing edible is wasted casually during a hard winter. Outside, frost grips the roofs and hardens the yard. Inside, religious rules, social rank, preservation methods, and available supplies determine what each person receives. Hunger may be universal, but dinner is carefully divided. You hear another bell. Dishes begin moving from the kitchen in a warm, fragrant procession. Bread leads, fish follows, and meat waits for a more suitable day. The meal is ready, though not equal. You follow the departing dishes only as far as the passage, where another servant nearly collides with you while carrying 2 wooden buckets. Water trembles against their rims. His arms are rigid from the weight, and his shoulders rise with each careful step. The buckets smell faintly of wet oak. Their iron hoops are cold enough to bite bare fingers. Every movement sends a small wave against the sides, and each lost splash means another journey through the winter air. Water seems simple until a castle needs it. Drinking, cooking, washing, brewing, cleaning, fire control, animal care, and religious use all demand steady supplies. A royal fortress consumes far more than one nearby household. Yet water does not arrive through hidden pipes at the turn of a handle. Someone must fetch it. You step into the yard beside the carrier. Frost has thickened since you last crossed this space. The ground shines beneath lantern light, and the packed snow gives a brittle crunch. Wind moves smoke between the buildings, turning familiar paths into dim corridors. The servant walks toward a sheltered cistern or storage area. The exact water system at Windsor during this particular winter cannot be described with complete confidence. Wells, stored rainwater, river supplies, and carried water may all have contributed at different times and locations. The castle's elevated position offers defence, but height complicates water access. A deep well requires major labour to dig, line, maintain, and protect. Drawing water upward demands rope, containers, strength, and time. A frozen mechanism can turn a routine task into an exhausting one. You hear a wooden axle groan from somewhere ahead. A rope rubs against a worn edge, producing a dry, strained sound. Several people stand around a well opening protected by a low structure and heavy cover. The cover matters. It keeps out debris, animals, and careless feet. It also shields the water from some cold, though not enough to make winter work comfortable. A man turns the winding handle. The rope tightens slowly as a filled bucket rises from darkness. His gloves are stiff with damp, and frost clings to the loose fibres. Another worker waits beside him, ready to steady the container. The bucket appears, swinging gently. Cold mist rises from the opening. The water below is dark, hidden, and still. You lean closer and smell stone, earth, damp wood, and something mineral. The air near the shaft feels different from the yard, as though the ground is breathing. You help guide the bucket onto the platform. Water sloshes over one edge and freezes in a thin film across the boards. The worker scatters ash and straw over the slick patch, improving the footing slightly, very slightly. Deep wells are among the most important practical features of fortified sites. During siege conditions, access to water can determine whether walls remain defensible. Stored food means little if thirst weakens the garrison first. That truth makes the well a guarded resource. Its condition must be watched. Ropes wear through, buckets split, handles crack. Contamination can spread illness through the entire household. People may not understand microbes, but they recognize foul smells, strange colors, dead animals, and sudden sickness. Experience creates rules even when the causes remain invisible. A less familiar concern involves beliefs about water spirits, sacred springs, and protective objects placed near wells. Christian prayers can exist beside older customs. A worker may cross himself before lowering a bucket, especially when darkness and depth encourage the imagination. Some wells acquire stories. Voices are heard below, objects vanish, a rope breaks after someone speaks carelessly. Cold water, echoing stone, and night duty provide excellent conditions for folklore. You listen as the bucket descends again. The rope whispers against the wheel. A drop falls somewhere below, followed by a distant echo. No spirit answers. The newly drawn water is poured into larger containers for distribution. Kitchen servants receive one share. Stable hands claim another. Someone carries a smaller vessel toward the chapel. Each destination has its own urgency. Drinking water may not always be the first choice at meals. Ale is common across many levels of society, partly because brewing creates a familiar and nourishing drink. Wine serves wealthier tables, yet the idea that medieval people never drank water is misleading. Clean water is consumed when available. Springs and wells can be valued highly. The real issue is reliability, not universal avoidance. You dip a wooden cup into the fresh bucket. The water tastes cold, slightly earthy, and almost metallic. It numbs your teeth. After smoke, salt, and kitchen heat, the simplicity feels refreshing. Then your fingers begin aching around the cup. The worker pours the remainder into a covered tub. Stored water must be protected from dirt and freezing. Containers near kitchens may remain usable because nearby fires warm the surrounding air. Others require ice to be broken from the surface each morning. Heating water creates another chain of labour. A servant carries it to the kitchen, a pot is filled, fuel is added to the fire. The warmed water is then carried again, often upstairs or across the ward. One basin of warm washing water may represent dozens of physical actions. The recipient usually experiences only the final comfort. You accompany a maid carrying a smaller bucket toward a chamber. Her steps are quick but controlled. Steam is not yet rising. Because the water remains cold, it will be heated near a hearth, then used for washing hands, faces, utensils, or cloth. Full bathing is less frequent during severe weather, especially when heating and carrying enough water becomes difficult. Still, medieval people are not indifferent to cleanliness. Hands are washed before meals, faces are rinsed, and local washing remains common. Elite households may use basins, cloths, scented water, and attendants. Monastic and medical traditions also value washing under appropriate conditions. Practice depends upon season, status, health, and access. The extent of bathing within Windsor's household in 1215 remains open to interpretation. Written sources reveal ideals, purchases, and occasional facilities, but private daily habits rarely leave clear records. One person may wash carefully while another avoids water with impressive determination. The maid reaches a chamber and pours water into an iron pot near the fire. The surface shivers as heat begins passing through the metal. Soon, tiny bubbles gather along the bottom. A servant adds herbs to a separate bowl. Rosemary, sage, lavender, or other plants may scent washing water when available. Their use offers pleasure, status, and a sense of freshness within smoky interiors. You rub a damp cloth between your hands. It feels rough but clean. Warmth spreads through your fingers when the maid pours heated water over it. The scent of herbs rises gently, softening the room's wool, ash, and human closeness. Elsewhere, water serves harsher tasks. Pots need scrubbing, floors require rinsing, chamber vessels must be emptied and cleaned. Blood from butchery, grease from cooking, mud from boots, and waste from animals all demand removal. Castles generate dirt constantly. Drainage channels, pits, gutters, and careful disposal help manage the problem, though never perfectly in freezing weather. Waste can harden where it falls. Thawing later creates consequences nobody wishes to discuss during supper. Water also stands ready against fire. Timber roofs, hangings, straw, rushes, and stored fuel make flames dangerous. Buckets kept near vulnerable buildings can save precious moments. A dropped candle may threaten far more people than an enemy outside the walls. You return to the yard as another line forms near the well. Servants wait with buckets and jars and tubs. Their breath floats in the darkness. Nobody mistakes this work for glory. The winding handle turns again. Rope rises, water climbs, shoulders strain. Across Windsor, people drink, cook, wash, pray, clean, and prepare for danger because these hands keep drawing from the earth. The castle may command the valley, but its daily life depends upon each heavy bucket. You watch one carrier disappear toward the stables, where thirsty horses wait behind steaming doors. Another turns toward the kitchens. A third heads for the private rooms above. Water moves everywhere, carried one burden at a time. You leave the well behind and follow a narrow passage where servants move before the next bell. The castle has not yet reached true morning, yet work already presses through its rooms. Darkness lingers in stairwells, and the air carries smoke, damp wool, tallow, and yesterday's ashes. A page hurries past with a bundle of kindling held against his chest. He is young enough to look sleepy, but experienced enough not to slow down. Behind him, a maid carries a lamp whose flame leans inside its horn covering. You follow her into a chamber where the fire has nearly died. Grey embers hide beneath a crust of ash. The room is cold enough to make the bed curtains feel stiff. Someone sleeping inside shifts, coughs once, and pulls the covers closer. The maid kneels beside the hearth. She brushes ash aside, finds a faint red glow, and places dry shavings over it. Her breath feeds the ember carefully. A thin thread of smoke rises before the first small flame appears. This is how the household begins. Long before noble occupants leave their beds, servants prepare warmth, clothing, water, light, food, and order. Their labour must often remain quiet and almost invisible. A successful morning appears effortless only because many people have been awake for hours. The maid adds twigs, then a small split log. Firelight returns slowly to the chamber. It touches the bed frame, a wooden chest, folded garments, and the tired lines around her eyes. You notice how cold her hands look. The skin across her knuckles is cracked, and one finger carries a strip of cloth. Repeated washing, smoke, rough fabric, and winter air leave marks that no household account records. Another servant enters with warmed water. Steam curls above a basin and briefly softens the room's smell. She places it beside a cloth, comb, and folded linen. The person in the bed will wake to comfort assembled by others. Pages and chamber servants learn precise routines. Clothing must be ready in the correct order. Belts, shoes, cloaks, gloves, and personal objects must not be misplaced. A missing buckle can delay a lord, embarrass an attendant, and produce blame far beyond the value of the buckle. You step into the passage again. Several boys wait near a doorway, whispering until an older servant silences them. One holds a pair of boots near the fire. Another brushes dried mud from a cloak. A third carries a message he has repeated so often that his lips still move around the words. Pages in noble households are not merely decorative children. They serve, observe, carry messages, learn manners, and begin training for adult roles. Some are sons of respectable families placed within another household for education and advancement. Their lives combine privilege with constant obedience. They may sleep in crowded rooms, rise before dawn, and spend long hours near people who outrank them. Good service can bring opportunity. Poor timing can bring a sharp rebuke. One boy has been assigned to warm gloves near a brazier. He holds them too close, and the leather begins to smell unpleasantly hot. An older page snatches them away before damage occurs. The lesson is silent. Nearby, a groom enters from the yard with frost on his shoulders. He stamps snow from his boots and carries news that one horse has loosened a shoe. The stable must now involve the smith, a messenger, and perhaps a change of travel plans. Castle work rarely stays within one occupation. A single problem moves through several hands. You continue toward a service room where women sort linen by touch and condition. Sheets, towels, shirts, cloths, and napkins require washing, drying, mending, and careful storage. Linen carries dirt visibly, which makes its cleanliness especially important in elite surroundings. Winter laundering is punishing. Water must be hauled and heated. Cloth may be soaked with lye or treated using soap where available. Rinsing demands more water, and drying becomes difficult in cold, smoky weather. A laundress lifts a damp sheet from a tub. Her arms strain as water pours from the heavy fabric. Two others twist it between them, sending a stream across the floor toward a shallow drain. The wet linen smells of ash, fat, and lye. Medieval soap can be made from rendered grease mixed with alkaline substances. Though quality varies widely, it cleans, but it may also roughen skin and weaken cloth when used harshly. The women hang the sheet near a heated space, careful not to bring it close enough to scorch. Smoke may dry fabric faster, but it also leaves its own scent. A truly fresh medieval sheet can still smell faintly of fire. The records that survive from royal households identify many offices and payments, yet they rarely preserve every servant's exact daily sequence. Duties overlap, names disappear, and an informal labour goes uncounted. Reconstructing a single morning therefore requires both evidence and caution. It is also difficult to know how many women worked permanently within Windsor during this winter. Some roles are clearer in documents than others. Male clerks often recorded male officials, while women's labour could remain less visible despite its importance. You pass a small room where an exhausted servant sleeps sitting upright against a wall. His head has fallen forward, and a folded sack supports his neck. Nobody wakes him. Perhaps he worked through part of the night. Rest follows duty rather than darkness. A chamberlain's assistant appears with keys hanging from his belt. They knock softly as he walks. Storage chests, cupboards, rooms, and supplies require supervision. Access itself is a form of authority. Household officers manage different areas of royal life, including chambers, kitchens, stables, stores, finance, and ceremonial service. The system can be complex, especially when the king moves between residences. Each department depends upon records, hierarchy, and personal trust. The assistant unlocks a chest containing folded cloth. He checks the contents against a note, then removes one fur-lined garment. The fur is brushed, inspected, and passed to another servant without unnecessary conversation. Peculiar custom in some households involves sleeping with important keys beneath a pillow or close to the body. The practice discourages theft, though it may create uncomfortable dreams. Whether anyone at Windsor does so tonight remains impossible to prove. You climb a narrow stair behind two servants carrying a mattress. It is stuffed with wool, straw, feathers, or some combination shaped by age and status. The object bends awkwardly around the turn, forcing both men to stop and reconsider. They push, it catches. They pull, it catches again. After several whispered opinions about the builder, they lift one end higher and continue. The mattress finally passes, leaving dust floating in the lamplight. Above, a room is being transformed for a guest. A portable bed frame stands ready. Curtains are unfolded. A chest has been moved against the wall. Rushes are swept into a cleaner arrangement. And a brazier waits to be lit. Mobility defines much of royal household life. Furnishings, bedding, tableware, clothing, records, and equipment may travel with the court. A castle is prepared to receive authority, not merely to house it permanently. That creates constant work for servants. Rooms must be opened, aired, heated, cleaned, and supplied. When guests appear, objects are counted, packed, repaired, and sent onward. You descend toward the hall as more people wake. Voices become clearer. Doors open. Someone calls for bread, another for boots, and another for a clerk who is apparently never where expected. The household is gathering momentum. A young messenger runs past with a sealed note tucked inside his tunic. He knows the quickest route through passages and yards. He also knows which stair becomes slippery, which guard asks unnecessary questions, and which doorway should never be used without permission. Knowledge like this keeps Windsor functioning. It is learned through repetition, correction, gossip, and memory. No single written guide can explore in the whole castle. You pause near the hall entrance. Servants carry benches into place, spread cloths, trim lamps, and clear the remains of the night. Their movements overlap without complete disorder. Soon, soldiers will change watches, officials will review supplies, and noble occupants will expect the day to begin properly. None of them will see every task that made the beginning possible. You do. The first pale light now touches the upper walls outside. It reveals smoke drifting across the ward and frost shining on the roofs. Inside, tired hands keep moving. Before sunrise, Windsor already belongs to its servants. You step from the servants' passage into the pale morning air. Where the cold feels sharper after indoor smoke, the upper walls catch a weak silver light. Frost lies along the parapets, and every exposed timber appears edged with white. A change of watch is underway. Men descend from the wall walk with stiff movements. Carrying spears, bows, shields, and tired expressions, their replacements climb toward them, fastening cloaks and adjusting gloves as they go. The exchange is orderly, though nobody looks delighted by the arrangement. One returning guard stamps his boots beside a brazier. Ice has gathered around the hems of his cloak. He stretches his fingers over the coals, wincing as warmth returns to them. Night watch leaves its own fatigue. A sentry must remain alert while the body urges sleep and the darkness offers very little entertainment. He listens for hooves, voices, scraping ladders, unusual barking, and any change in the ordinary sounds below. Most of the time, nothing happens that does not make the duty easy. You climb the wooden stair toward the wall. Each step feels slick beneath your boots, and the rail is rough with frozen moisture. Wind reaches you before the view does, sliding beneath your cloak and pressing cold fabric against your legs. At the top, Windsor opens around you. The Thames lies below like a dark ribbon bordered by frost. Roads cross the pale landscape, nearly empty at this hour. Small roofs beyond the defences release thin smoke into the still air. A guard stands beneath a hood, watching the eastern approach. His spear rests beside him, while a shield leans against the parapet. The shield's painted surface is scratched and dulled from use. Castle garrisons depend upon routine rather than constant battle. Guards inspect gates, patrol walls, challenge strangers, carry messages, and respond to alarms. They also repair equipment, train, eat, wait, and complain about weather with impressive consistency. The man beside you scans the road again. Political danger has made every arrival more interesting. King John's conflict with rebellious barons has deepened since the sealing of Magna Carta. Agreements made in summer now feel distant beneath the winter sky. Windsor holds particular importance because of its position near London and major routes. A royal castle can shelter troops, store supplies, control movement, and display authority. Possession of such a fortress carries practical and symbolic weight. The sentry points toward a distant cluster of trees. A rider appeared there during the night, then turned away before reaching the road. Perhaps he was a messenger, scout, traveller, poacher, or merely someone who disliked the look of guarded walls. Uncertainty keeps the watch awake. You hear the string of a bow being tested nearby. An archer examines the fibres for dampness and wear. Moisture can weaken equipment, while cold makes hands clumsy and materials less predictable. Longbows will become strongly associated with later English warfare. But bows already serve hunters, soldiers, and castle defenders. Crossbows are also important during this period, offering power and accuracy with different training demands. A crossbowman sits beneath a small shelter, checking the mechanism of his weapon. He rubs wax into the string and examines the wooden stock for cracks. The bow itself is difficult to span without a belt hook, lever, or other assistance. Crossbows inspire moral unease among some church authorities because of their deadly effectiveness, especially against fellow Christians. Restrictions are proclaimed, though warfare rarely obeys sermons when survival or advantage is involved. The soldier grins when this is mentioned. Apparently, rules feel more flexible from behind a battlement. Beside him rest a bundle of bolts. Their iron heads are wrapped against moisture. Shafts must remain straight, and fletching must be kept in usable condition. A damaged projectile can waste time at the worst possible moment. You run one glove finger along a shaft. The wood feels smooth, cold, and carefully worked. Every weapon here represents labour by smiths, fletchers, bowyers, carpenters, leatherworkers, and carriers. The wall itself requires attention too. Guards inspect loose stones, cracked timber, blocked passages, and places where ice creates dangerous footing. Fences fail gradually before they fail suddenly. A section of parapet has been scattered with sand and ash. The mixture adds grip where frost has formed. One careless step could send a man down the stair, or over an edge no prayer would make shorter. The precise strength of Windsor's garrison during this winter remains uncertain. Numbers could change rapidly with royal orders, political threats, and troop movements, and available funds. Records sometimes reveal payments or named officers, but they do not always capture every temporary soldier. Military service is equally varied. Some men belong to the royal household. Others may serve through feudal obligation, paid contracts, local duty, or temporary recruitment. Their loyalty can depend upon oath, wages, lordship, fear, or personal calculation. A guard near the tower asks whether his pay has arrived. Nobody answers. He laughs without much joy and returns to his post. Money matters, even when banners and honour fill official speeches. A hungry soldier with unpaid wages may become less interested in abstract loyalty. Food reaches the wall in a covered basket. Inside are bread, cheese, and a small jug of ale. The men gather close, taking portions without leaving the approach unwatched. You receive a piece of coarse bread. It is firm from the cold but still carries a faint warmth near its centre. The cheese tastes salty and sharp. Ale washes away the dryness and leaves a yeasty scent beneath your nose. The meal is simple, but welcome. One soldier keeps a dried sprig tucked inside his glove. He says it protects against numbness and brings luck during long watches. The herb probably does little for circulation, yet belief itself can offer comfort. Other guards favour charms, saints' tokens, scraps of prayer, or small objects carried from home. Warfare and superstition often share the same pocket. A man who trusts his armour may still touch a charm before opening a gate. Below, the castle grows louder. Stable doors open, carts begin moving, kitchen smoke thickens. The ordinary household resumes while the soldiers remain above it. Separated by heightened duty, their boredom is interrupted by a horn. Every man turns. The sound comes from the gate, brief and controlled rather than urgent. A mounted party approaches along the road. You see dark figures moving against the pale ground, their horses' breath rising around them. The captain arrives and studies the riders. He asks for positions, numbers, colours, and pace. The guards answer carefully. No one assumes danger, but no one dismisses it. As the party nears, a banner becomes visible. Recognition moves along the wall, followed by a slight release of tension. The riders are expected messengers and retainers, not an attacking force. Spears lower by a few inches. Breathing becomes easier. Still, the gate will not open without challenge. Names are called. Authority is confirmed. The visitors wait in the cold while procedures unfold. You remain on the wall as the exchange continues below. The moment reveals the true nature of defence. It is not only battle, arrows, and dramatic courage. It is repetition, patience, inspection, and the refusal to become careless. The wind strengthens across the parapet. It carries the smell of river mist, chimney smoke, horse sweat, and distant wood fires. Your face aches where the cold reaches exposed skin. The guard beside you pulls his hood tighter. His watch has only just begun. For hours, he will stare across roads that may remain empty. He will listen to sounds that may mean nothing. He will keep his weapon dry, his feet moving, and his attention fixed beyond the walls. Below, Windsor eats, works, argues, and warms itself. Above, the soldiers wait. You descend from the wall as the mounted party enters below, bringing cold air, clattering tack, and a sudden burst of activity. Stable hands hurry forward before the riders have fully dismounted. Horses toss their heads, stamp at the frozen ground, and send steam curling from their nostrils. The courtyard smells stronger now. Hay, leather, manure, smoke, damp wool, and warm animal breath combine beneath the pale sky. After the empty wind above the parapet, the closeness feels almost sheltering. You follow a groom toward the stables. Inside, the light falls softly through gaps in the timber, and from a few protected lamps, rows of horses stand in stalls, shifting their weight and chewing. Hooves scrape packed earth. Chains knock against wooden rails. Somewhere in the darkness, an animal gives a deep, tired sigh. The warmth surprises you. It does not come from a hearth, it comes from bodies. Large animals release steady heat, especially when grouped inside a sheltered building. The air remains cold, but less cruel than the open yard. A groom removes a saddle from a newly arrived horse. The leather creaks as he lifts it free. Beneath the saddlecloth, the horse's coat is dark with sweat. Leaving it wet in winter could chill the animal badly, though. So the groom begins rubbing it with straw and cloth. His movements are firm and patient. He works along the neck, back, and flanks while speaking softly. The horse's ears turn toward his voice. Horses sit near the centre of castle life. They carry messengers, soldiers, nobles, supplies, and hunting parties. Different animals are chosen for speed, strength, comfort, or war. A prestigious mount also displays wealth more clearly than many pieces of furniture. Yet status does not keep a horse healthy. It still needs feed, water, shelter, grooming, clean bedding, and careful attention to its feet. You pass a stall where another groom lifts a hoof. He clears packed dirt from the underside using a small tool. The horse leans slightly against him, testing his balance and the groom's patience. Shoes matter on frozen and stony ground. Iron horseshoes protect hooves, though they can become dangerously slick on ice. Farriers adjust shape and fitting according to wear, terrain, and the animal's condition. A loose shoe has caused concern this morning. The horse now stands quietly while a smith examines it. He runs his fingers along the hoof wall, then studies the worn iron. The exact number and a type of horses kept at Windsor during this season cannot be recovered neatly. Royal records may mention purchases, fodder, transport, or named animals, but stable populations change with every arrival and departure. A crowded political year makes the picture even less stable. You hear grain being poured into a manger. The sound is dry and comforting. Oats are valuable winter feed. Though horses also depend upon hay and other fodder, supplies must be kept away from damp and rodents, just like food intended for people. One animal paws impatiently at the floor. The groom ignores it until the horse stops, then offers the feed. Good handling blends authority with timing. Nearby, a smaller horse or pony stands under a rough blanket. It may carry baggage, pull a light cart, or serve a less prestigious rider. Not every castle horse is a magnificent war mount. Many are practical workers with ordinary duties. A stable boy passes carrying hay above his head. Loose stems cling to his hair and shoulders. He ducks beneath a beam, but one bundle brushes the roof and showers at him with dust. He sneezes twice. The horses barely notice. Beyond the stalls, dogs bark from a separate enclosure. You step toward the sound and find several hounds moving restlessly behind a wooden barrier. Their coats vary in texture and colour. Some are lean and long-legged, built for pursuit. Others are heavier, with broad heads and watchful eyes. Dogs serve many purposes in a noble household. They hunt deer, boar, hare, and birds. They guard buildings, accompany travellers, control vermin, and provide companionship. Their value depends upon breeding, training, and temperament. One hound pushes its nose through the gap and sniffs your glove. Its breath is warm and its whiskers are damp when you scratch behind its ear. The animal closes its eyes with an immediate approval. The handler warns you that this particular dog steals gloves. You withdraw your hand. The warning arrives just in time. Hunting dogs may receive careful treatment because they support elite sport and display. Kennel servants know individual animals, feeding routines, injuries, and behaviour. A skilled hound represents training and investment, not merely affection. Even so, kennels are noisy places. Barking travels through timber walls, especially when strangers or food appear. During long nights, dogs can warn guards of movement before human ears detect it. A tale repeated among castle servants claims that certain dogs can sense treachery before any person speaks. They growl at false guests, avoid cursed rooms, or howl before bad news arrives, most likely. They read scent, posture, and tension with remarkable skill. Still, nobody laughs too loudly when a trusted hound refuses to enter a chamber. You move farther along the yard, where chickens scratch beneath a sheltered platform. Their feet disturb straw and frozen dirt. A cock flaps onto a barrel and announces himself with excessive confidence. Poultry provide eggs, meat, feathers, and kitchen scraps converted into something useful. They are easy to overlook until one escapes into a busy passage. Then they become the castle's most urgent political issue. A servant scatters grain across the ground. Birds rush toward it, pecking rapidly. One hen remains near the wall, guarding a hidden nest with suspicious intensity. Geese may also be kept for meat. Feathers, eggs, and alarm. Their loud calls make them difficult neighbours but effective sentries. A goose disturbed at night can wake half a yard and offend the remaining half. Pigeons occupy another place in elite food systems. Dovecotes provide young birds for the table, along with manure for gardens and fields. The right to maintain a large dovecote can reflect privilege. Since the birds feed freely across surrounding land, no grand dovecote is clearly before you now, but pigeons circle above the roofs. Their wings make a soft, rushing sound. Several settle along a ridge, puffing their feathers against the cold. You enter a loft where hay and straw are stored. Dust floats in narrow beams of light. The smell is dry, sweet, and slightly mouldy near one wall. Storage remains a constant worry. A leaking roof can ruin fodder. One spark can destroy the building. Mice consume grain, while damp encourages rot. Workers inspect the stacks and keep lanterns carefully shielded. Fire near hay is feared more than many distant enemies. A single careless flame could spread through roofs, stables, workshops, and stores before enough water arrives. Below, a horse kicks once against a stallboard. The impact shakes dust from the rafters. Everyone pauses, listens, then continues. Castle animals share human hardship, but not equally. A lord's favourite horse may receive better bedding than a poor labourer. A hunting dog may eat fine scraps while villagers outside survive on coarse bread. Rank extends across species. That does not make care insincere. Grooms form bonds with horses. Kennel workers know which hound fears thunder. Stable boys sit beside sick animals through the night because duty and affection have become difficult to separate. You return to the yard as the sun rises weakly above the walls. Steam lifts from open stable doors. Dogs settle after feeding. Chickens continue their small disputes beneath the carts. The castle feels less like a human fortress now. It is a shared winter habitat, filled with creatures that carry, guard, feed, warn, comfort, and occasionally create chaos. You place one hand against a horse's neck, beneath the coarse winter coat. Warmth pulses steadily. The animal turns its head and breathes against your sleeve. For a moment, the cold seems farther away. You leave the stable warmth and cross the ward toward the chapel, where a bell begins to sound above the roofs. Its voice is measured and solemn, spreading through smoke, frost, and morning labour. Servants slow as they hear it. A groom removes his cap. A clerk pauses beside a doorway. Two boys carrying baskets lower their voices, though neither stops walking. The bell does not silence the castle. It changes its rhythm. You follow a narrow path where frozen mud has been covered with straw. The chapel stands within the defended world, close enough to daily work that prayer and labour constantly overlap. Its walls are cold, but the doorway offers shelter from the wind. Inside, the atmosphere shifts immediately. The air smells of wax, old timber, stone dust, damp wool, and faint incense. Candles burn before the altar, their flames small and steady. Coloured decoration is limited in the dimness, yet painted surfaces and cloth brighten the sacred space. Your boots sound too loud against the floor. Others enter behind you, producing soft scrapes, coughs, and rustling cloaks. Breath forms pale clouds near the door, then disappears closer to the candles. A priest stands near the altar, preparing for prayer. His vestments add colour to the winter gloom, though they do little to warm his hands. An assistant arranges vessels, books, and cloths with careful precision. Religion shapes the day at Windsor as firmly as hunger or military duty. Bells mark prayer, worship accompanies royal authority, and Christian festivals organise the year. The chapel serves both devotion and ceremony, connecting the household to a wider spiritual order. In 1215, that order feels strained. King John's conflict with the church has left deep memories. Even after reconciliation with the papacy, political oaths, baronial rebellion, and papal authority now press against each other. Sacred language surrounds disputes over power, loyalty, and law. You stand among soldiers, servants, clerks, and household officers. Their ranks remain visible through clothing and position, yet all face the same altar. Equality before God does not produce equal seating. High-status worshippers occupy more privileged places, while servants remain farther back. Private devotion and public hierarchy share the same room without apparent embarrassment. Medieval society is skilled at holding both ideas at once. The priest begins in Latin. Many listeners understand portions rather than every word. Familiar phrases, gestures, tones, and repeated responses guide them through the service. Worship is experienced through sound, sight, movement, and memory, not only through literal comprehension. You hear the soft murmur of voices answering together. The sound rises, settles, and fades beneath the stone roof. A candle crackles faintly. The pace is slow. Outside, someone shouts at a mule. Inside, no one reacts. The contrast feels natural rather than disrespectful. A castle chapel exists within practical life, not apart from it. Doors open, footsteps pass, and duties continue beyond the walls. A small reliquary rests near the altar. It may hold a fragment associated with a saint, a holy place, or an object of devotion. Relics are believed to carry spiritual presence and protective power. Royal households value them for faith, prestige, and legitimacy. You cannot see what lies inside. That may increase its effect. People approach sacred objects with expectations shaped by prayer, fear, hope, and story. A servant may ask for healing. A soldier may seek protection. A noble may request success in negotiation or war. One old custom encourages touching a token, cloth, or personal item to a holy object, allowing some blessing to travel with it. The item may then be carried close to the body or brought to someone ill. A page near you holds a narrow strip of fabric in his fist when others move forward. He touches it briefly to the reliquary's outer case. His expression remains serious. Perhaps it belongs to his mother. Perhaps it protects him from punishment. Faith does not always explain itself. The chapel calendar offers moments of brightness during the darkest season. Advent leads toward Christmas, followed by feast days, processions, special foods, music, and almsgiving. Even in political crisis, sacred celebration gives structure to winter. The exact form of worship at Windsor during the coldest weeks of 1215 is difficult to recover in every detail. Records reveal clergy, royal foundations, payments, and ceremonial expectations. They do not preserve each sermon, whispered prayer, or hurried service. There is also uncertainty about which relics were present at specific moments. Sacred objects travelled with kings, shifted between chapels, and sometimes appeared in records only when money or administration demanded notice. The gaps leave room for caution. They also leave room for imagination. You picture the chapel during a feast night, when additional candles glow across the walls, incense thickens the air, voices rise in chant while wind presses against the shutters. For a little while, winter becomes ceremonial. Music matters deeply here. Plain chant creates long, flowing lines that suit the enclosed space. A trained voice can fill the chapel without strain, carrying words upward into shadow. The current prayer continues quietly. One singer begins a phrase, and others answer. The notes move sound slowly, suspended in the cold air. You feel the sound more than you follow it. It settles in your chest. Among the household, sacred protection may blend with local habit. People carry crosses, saint medals, prayer slips, blessed herbs, or small charms. Official teaching does not always approve every object, but boundaries between devotion and superstition remain porous. A guard whispers that a piece of candle wax from a holy service can protect a doorway during storms. Another man says blessed bread should be kept against sudden illness. Neither seems interested in theological precision. One especially curious belief holds that chapel bells can drive away dangerous weather or hostile spirits. Sound itself becomes protective, spreading sacred order across the landscape. Whether every priest encourages such thinking is another matter. The service ends gradually. People bow, cross themselves, and begin leaving according to rank and urgency. Servants depart quickly because workers waited for them. Soldiers return to posts, clerks resume messages and accounts. A woman remains near the back. She kneels beside a pillar, Her hands folded beneath her cloak, her lips move without sound. No one disturbs her. You wait nearby and hear the room settling. Wax drips, a bench creaks, wind brushes the outer wall with a low, steady whisper. The woman finally rises. Her face appears calmer, though nothing outside has changed. The winter remains severe, food remains counted, political danger remains close. Prayer has not removed uncertainty. It has made uncertainty bearable. You step toward the altar rail, where the scent of incense lingers more strongly. The smoke is sweet, resinous, and slightly bitter. It clings to cloth and hair just as kitchen smoke does, but carries a different meaning. Medieval people often understand illness, weather, war, and misfortune through both natural and spiritual causes. A fever may come from imbalance, bad air, divine testing, or harmful influence. Protection therefore includes medicine, prayer, confession, relics, and practical care. These approaches do not feel contradictory to those using them. The visible and invisible worlds remain closely joined. A priest speaks softly with a soldier near the door. The man looks tired, perhaps frightened. He's been assigned to a night watch during a time of rebellion. The priest places a hand on his shoulder. No grand speech follows. The gesture is enough. You leave the chapel as another bell sounds farther away. Its tone is lighter, perhaps marking a household duty rather than worship. Across the ward, carts move, dogs bark, and kitchen servants call to one another. The sacred moment dissolves into ordinary noise. Still, something remains with you. The candlelight, the chant, and the kneeling woman become part of Windsor's winter life. Faith does not float above hunger, cold, and politics. It lives among them, offering explanation, routine, comfort, and sometimes fear. You turn toward a passage where coughing echoes behind a closed door. Herbs hang from a beam nearby, and a servant carries a steaming bowl beneath a cloth. Prayer may comfort the sick. Now someone must treat them. You leave the quiet of the chapel and follow the servant carrying the steaming bowl through a narrow stone passage. The warmth rising from the vessel fades quickly into the cold air. Every few steps, a little cloud of fragrant steam escapes from beneath the cloth covering it. The smell reaches you before the room does. You notice sage, rosemary, warm broth, and something bitter that reminds you of crushed bark. It is not unpleasant, but neither does it promise comfort. The servant pushes open a wooden door. Inside, the chamber is quieter than the bustling kitchens or busy stables. A fire burns gently in the hearth, giving more light than heat. Curtains have been drawn tightly around the windows. An extra blankets cover the bed in one corner. Someone coughs. The sound is deep, dry, and lingering. Winter presses heavily upon every household, regardless of rank. Cold air irritates the lungs, damp clothing chills the body. Crowded rooms allow illness to spread from person to person with remarkable speed. A castle protects against enemies outside its walls, yet offers little defense against fever carried by someone already inside. The man lying beneath the blankets opens his eyes as the servant approaches. His face is pale, though the fire paints warm colours across his cheeks. A folded cloth rests upon his forehead. The servant places the bowl beside the bed and gently stirs its contents. Herbs float across the surface in slow circles. The patient breathes deeply before lifting the cup with both hands. Warmth itself can feel medicinal. The liquid smells earthy and slightly sweet. Honey softens the sharper herbs, while broth provides strength after several days of poor appetite. Whether it cures the illness matters less than whether it helps the patient continue fighting it. Nearby, another servant replaces damp cloths with dry ones. The used linen is carried away immediately. Fresh blankets are shaken out near the fire before being placed over the sleeper once more. You notice how carefully everyone moves. Voices remain low, doors close gently. Even boots seem quieter in this room. Medieval medicine combines observation, inherited knowledge, religious belief, and classical learning. Physicians, surgeons, monks, apothecaries, midwives, and experienced household servants each contribute different kinds of care. Treatments vary according to education, wealth, and circumstance. The theory of the four humours strongly influences learned medicine during this period. Health is believed to depend upon balance within the body. Too much heat, cold, moisture, or dryness may contribute to illness. Encouraging treatments intended to restore harmony. A physician might recommend changes in diet, controlled bleeding, herbal preparations, or adjusted daily habits. These choices seem logical within the medical understanding of the age. Not every treatment proves helpful. Some certainly do more harm than good. Others offer genuine relief, even if the reason remains unknown to those providing them. You step toward a shelf holding small cloth bags tied with string. Dried herbs fill each one. Lavender, thyme, fennel, mint, sedge, and other familiar plants release faint aromas into the room. Many herbs possess real medicinal qualities recognized today, while others owe more to tradition than measurable effect. Medieval healers often learn through repeated experience, family teaching, monastery gardens, and copied manuscripts. The exact recipe inside every household remedy cannot always be recovered. Some survive in written collections, while others pass from voice to voice and disappear without record. Each generation adds, forgets, or changes something. The servant preparing another infusion does not consult a book. She reaches confidently toward the correct herbs, measures them by sight, and crushes them between her fingers before adding warm water. Practice has become memory across the room. An elderly woman sits spinning wool while watching another patient resting near the fire. She is neither physician nor priest, yet everyone seems pleased that she is here. Experience carries authority. She notices a young page rubbing his reddened hands together without speaking. She offers him a small pot of rendered fat mixed with herbs. He rubs the mixture across the cracked skin, making a face at the smell before smiling as the burning eases. Such mixtures often include animal fat, beeswax, plant oils, or fragrant herbs. They protect damaged skin from drying further during harsh weather. A story sometimes told among servants claims that carrying a walnut in one pocket helps prevent aching joints during cold months. Another insists that sleeping with certain herbs beneath the pillow discourages nightmares brought on by winter illness. No one argues loudly over these ideas. People keep the walnut anyway. Near the hearth, a physician has arrived. His clothing is plain but carefully maintained. He carries a leather satchel filled with folded cloths, small containers, writing materials, and a few simple instruments. He asks quiet questions before examining the patient. The physician studies breathing, skin colour, pulse, appetite, and recent symptoms. He listens more than he speaks. Observation forms an important part of medical practice, even when explanations differ from modern science. He requests fresh air for a moment. A servant opens the shutter slightly. Cold air enters immediately, carrying the scent of snow and distant smoke. The patient shivers beneath the blankets, yet the room feels less heavy after only a few breaths. Some medical advice from the period encourages attention to fresh surroundings, moderate exercise, suitable food, emotional balance, and proper sleep alongside medicinal treatment. Health is rarely viewed as depending upon one single remedy. Researchers continue examining how widely such recommendations reach different levels of society. Learned texts survive more often than the daily decisions made by ordinary household workers. What appears in manuscripts may not always match what happened beside an actual fireplace. The physician mixes powdered ingredients into warm wine. The aroma changes at once. Spices mingle with bitterness, creating something halfway between comfort and challenge. The patient drinks slowly, pausing after each swallow. Nearby, another servant tends to a small cut on her hand. The wound came from a kitchen knife rather than a battlefield. She washes it carefully before wrapping it with clean linen. Minor injuries are constant companions inside a working castle. Splinters, burns, cuts, bruises, strained muscles, and sawbacks arrive through ordinary labour, carrying wood, hauling water, grooming horses, chopping vegetables, lifting barrels, and climbing icy stairs all create opportunities for pain. The body remembers each task. You notice a young groom limping slightly as he enters with fresh straw for the floor. His ankle twisted yesterday while leading a nervous horse across frozen ground. He insists he is improving. Everyone pretends to believe him. The elderly spinner smiles knowingly. A kettle begins to sing softly over the fire. Steam curls upward, carrying another wave of herbal fragrance across the chamber. The smell settles into your clothing, joining smoke, wax, and wool gathered throughout the day. Outside, the wind rattles a shutter. Inside, someone laughs quietly after hearing an old joke. Illness has not erased kindness, it has simply slowed the room. The physician finishes writing a few notes on a small piece of parchment before packing away his supplies. He leaves instructions with the servant, reminding her about warmth, food, drink, and rest as he departs. Another patient begins to improve enough to sit upright. The blankets slide from his shoulders. Colour has returned to his face. Perhaps the herbs helped. Perhaps time deserves the credit. Perhaps both work together. You step back into the passage where life immediately becomes louder again. Buckets pass, boots echo, doors open, and distant voices drift from the kitchens. The sick chamber remains behind you, quietly continuing its patient work. Ahead, the castle prepares for another reminder that not every illness comes from cold weather. Some dangers arrive wearing fine clothing and polished smiles. You continue along the passage, leaving the sick room's herbal warmth behind. Ahead, the castle grows quieter, not because fewer people are present, but because rank has begun arranging the silence. A servant opens one door without knocking. At the next, he pauses, straightens his clothing, and waits for permission. The difference is small. It explains almost everything. Within Windsor, status determines where you sleep, what you eat, whom you serve, and how much cold you're expected to tolerate without complaint. Stone walls surround everyone, yet they do not create a shared experience. You enter a chamber prepared for a noble guest. A fire burns steadily in the hearth, fed with dry wood from the guarded stores. Thick hangings cover much of the wall. The bed stands above the draughty floor, enclosed by curtains and layered with blankets. A fur-lined cloak rests across a chest. The room is still cold, yet it is a carefully managed cold, softened by fuel, fabric, servants, and space. A knight near the hearth extends his hands toward the flames. His boots are clean, his belt decorated, and his wool tunic made from finer cloth than those worn in the yard. He complains that the chamber was warmer at another royal residence. The servant listening to him does not mention the labour required to heat this one. Elite life in a medieval castle includes genuine discomfort, but privilege changes the available remedies. A nobleman can request another blanket. A servant may be told to move faster. You follow the attendant into a smaller adjoining space. Here, 2 pages share a bench while waiting to be called. Their cloaks are plain but respectable. One belongs to a family hoping he will learn courtly behaviour, military skills, and useful connections. He watches everything. How the knight speaks to a clerk matters. Which guest enters first matters. Where a cup is placed matters. A household teaches hierarchy through constant observation. The other page rubs sleep from his eyes. He spent part of the night carrying messages between chambers and the gatehouse. Noble education contains rather more stair climbing than later romance suggests, farther along. You reach the clerk's room. Wax tablets, parchment, cords, seals, and writing tools cover a narrow table. A small brazier warms the space, though the clerk keeps his cloak fastened. Ink thickens in winter. fingers stiffen, and candles burn quickly. He reads a list of supplies aloud to an assistant. Grain, wine, fish, candles, fodder, cloth, and firewood become numbers in his hands. Those numbers decide which parts of the household remain comfortable. Clerks occupy an unusual position. They may lack noble birth. Yet literacy and administrative skill bring access to powerful people. A trusted royal clerk can influence decisions far beyond the apparent modesty of his chamber. The assistant sharpens a quill with a small knife. Tiny curls fall onto the table. He tests the point, frowns, and trims it again. Written authority depends upon fragile objects. A torn letter, broken seal, or blurred line can delay payment, confuse orders, or deepen suspicion in a tense winter. Paperwork travels beside armed men for good reason. You leave the clerks and descend toward rougher lodging. The air grows colder with every turn. Decorative cloth disappears from the walls. The floors carry more dirt, and smoke from crowded sleeping spaces hangs beneath the ceiling. Several soldiers rest in a shared room. Their cloak serve as blankets. Shields lean against the walls, while spears lie within easy reach. One man sleeps on straw beside a bench. Another repairs a torn shoe near the weak fire. A paid soldier may stand above a labourer in authority, yet his comfort remains uncertain. Wages can arrive late, food can be plain. Duty can place him on the wall during the worst hours of night. Rank has many levels, it rarely moves in a neat line. An experienced sergeant enters, and the room changes immediately. Men sit straighter. Conversation becomes quieter. He is not a great lord, but within this space his command is real. He checks the watch list and signs 2 men to the gate. One protests that he served there yesterday. The sergeant looks at him. The discussion ends. Below the soldiers' quarters, you reach a service room where kitchen workers eat after higher tables have been supplied. Their meal consists of bread, thick pottage, and small pieces of fish. The bowls are warm. That's enough to make the room welcoming. A scullion sits near the door, too tired to speak. Steam rises from his clothing where it dried beside the kitchen fire. His hands are reddened from hot water, cold water, grease, ash, and scrubbing. The senior cook eats at a better place near the hearth. He receives a larger portion and a cup of stronger drink. Even among servants, office and skill shape comfort. Household hierarchy continues downward through countless distinctions. A chamber servant may outrank a stable boy. A skilled mason may earn more than an untrained labourer. A trusted cook may command people who are socially respectable outside the kitchen. You notice how carefully everyone understands these boundaries. No chart hangs on the wall. None is needed. One established practice within great households is dining by rank. Seating order, vessel quality, portion size, and closeness to the Lord all communicate standing. Food does not merely nourish, it announces position. Even leftovers travel through this structure. Dishes leaving a high table may feed lower household members. Remaining bread can pass towards servants, dependents, or charitable distribution. Generosity and hierarchy operate together. The giver remains visibly above the receiver. A story circulates among the servants about a visiting noble who once demanded fresh strawberries during a winter stay. Whether the tale belongs to Windsor, another castle, or pure invention no longer matters. The point is the same. Power can request the impossible. Servants enjoy the story because nature refused more firmly than they ever could. You cross the yard toward a guarded building near the wall. The door is heavy, and the chamber beyond smells of damp stone, straw, and stale breath. A prisoner sits inside. He may be a debtor, suspected spy, captured soldier, political hostage, or local offender awaiting judgment. Medieval imprisonment is as often used for detention, pressure, or ransom rather than as a standardized long-term punishment. His clothing suggests respectable origins, the blanket beside him suggests limited comfort. A guard sets down bread and a cup. The prisoner asks for more fire. The guard says nothing. Captivity also follows rank. A valuable noble prisoner may receive decent lodging, servants, and negotiated freedom in exchange for money or promises. A poor captive may remain in harsher conditions with fewer advocates. The available evidence gives no complete list of everyone confined at Windsor during this precise winter. Political turmoil makes temporary detention plausible, but names and circumstances often vanish from surviving records. Later chroniclers focused upon kings, barons, and sieges. The forgotten prisoner leaves only a cold room in your imagination. You step outside and look upward toward the more comfortable chambers. Smoke rises from their chimneys. Firelight glows faintly behind covered openings. The noble guest above may fear rebellion, betrayal, or royal anger. The soldier fears unpaid wages and night duty. The servant fears mistakes. The prisoner fears the turning of a key. No rank removes anxiety. It merely changes its furniture. A horn sounds near the gate, followed by hurried footsteps. Messengers have brought further news from the troubled countryside. Inside the chambers, conversations stop across Windsor. Status still governs who hears the message first, who carries it onward, and who must wait for rumour. You remain near the guarded building as the horn sounds again from the gate. This time, the note is shorter and more urgent. Footsteps answer across the ward, striking frozen ground in quick, uneven rhythms. A messenger rides beneath the gatehouse with snow clinging to his cloak. His horse is dark with sweat, and foam gathers along the bit. 2 guards close behind him, while a clerk hurries forward carrying a lantern and writing case. The rider dismounts badly. His knees nearly fail when his boots touch the ground. A stable hand catches his arm, and another takes the reins. Nobody laughs. The exhaustion on the messenger's face has removed any possibility of amusement. A sealed packet is hidden beneath his cloak. The clerk studies the wax before touching it. A damaged seal may suggest interference, while the correct impression confirms whose authority the message claims to carry. In a season of rebellion, even wax becomes suspicious. You follow at a respectful distance as the packet travels toward the inner chambers. Servants step aside. Soldiers watch without appearing to watch. Within moments, everyone in the lower ward knows that news has arrived. Nobody knows what it says. That is where rumour begins. A kitchen boy whispers that rebel forces have gathered near London. A groom insists that several barons have abandoned King John. One guard claims armed men were seen beside the Thames, though another says they were merchants moving sheep. The stories spread faster than the messenger rode. By the end of the passage, the rebel army has doubled in size. By the kitchens, it has acquired siege engines. Near the stables, someone confidently reports that French ships have already crossed the Channel. Nothing travels more efficiently than fear. The political crisis has deep roots. In June 1215, King John accepted Magna Carta at Runnymede after sustained pressure from rebellious barons. The charter attempted to define limits upon royal power and protect certain established rights, though it did not create lasting peace. Within weeks, trust collapsed. John sought support from Pope Innocent III, who annulled the agreement and condemned the pressure placed upon the king. The rebels returned to armed resistance. England moved towards civil war, later called the First Barons' War, at Windsor. These developments are not distant matters discussed only by scholars. They influence supplies, guard duties, travel, wages, and every approaching rider. You enter a crowded antechamber outside the council room. Senior officers pass through the guarded door, but servants remain outside. A fire burns weakly on a brazier, producing more smoke than comfort. The messenger sits on a bench, drinking warmed ale. His hands shake around the cup. Melted snow drips from his boots and forms a dark patch across the rushes. A page asks quietly where he has come from. The messenger looks toward the guards before answering. That glance says enough. A clerk emerges with instructions for the gate captain. Watches are to be strengthened. Strangers must be questioned more carefully. Extra arrows should be moved closer to the walls. And horses must remain prepared for departure. The commands sound controlled. The people carrying them are not. You follow the captain toward the armory. He calls for a count of bows, crossbows, shields, helmets, and usable spearheads. Chests open with heavy creaks, iron, leather, wax, and dry wood release their mixed scent into the cold room. Weapons are rarely stored in perfect readiness without maintenance. Strings loosen, leather straps crack, metal rusts where damp enters. A fortress preparing for trouble must inspect everything before trouble reaches the gate. An armourer lifts a helmet and finds corrosion beneath its rim. He rubs the spot with cloth and oil, muttering that someone failed to dry it properly. Responsibility becomes difficult to locate during emergencies. Blame, however, remains abundant. Outside, soldiers gather in small groups. Their voices stay low, but fragments reach you. Some support the king, others serve because they are paid. Commanded, or attached to loyal lords, a few may privately sympathize with the rebels. No one announces uncertainty openly. Oaths carry serious weight. Yet medieval allegiance is not always simple. A knight may owe duties to several lords whose interests now conflict. Family ties, landholding, honour, fear, and practical survival pull in different directions. Loyalty becomes a knot. The surviving evidence leaves many individual choices hidden. Chroniclers describe powerful barons and royal decisions, but ordinary guards rarely explain their private thoughts. A man standing on Windsor's wall may defend the king sincerely, reluctantly, or merely because leaving would be dangerous. You watch one soldier sharpen a spearhead. The stone makes a dry scraping sound against iron. He works steadily, refusing to join the surrounding conversation. Another man produces a small bone die from his pouch. He rolls it once across a barrel lid, catches it, then puts it away. Some soldiers treat dice as tools of fortune, believing a favourable cast before battle may hint at what lies ahead. A priest would probably discourage such confidence. The soldier still keeps the die. From the kitchens comes the smell of onions and hot fat. Meals continue because preparation cannot pause for politics. Yet portions are being reconsidered. If the castle faces siege or interrupted supply, stores must last longer. A household officer orders new counts of grain, salted meat, fish, candles, fodder, and firewood. Clerks begin comparing records. Storekeepers defend their figures with sudden passion. One barrel appears lighter than expected. The cooper blames leakage. The steward suspects theft. A kitchen servant quietly suggests inaccurate counting, then wisely leaves. You walk toward the gatehouse, where new precautions are already visible. The outer doors remain closed longer between arrivals. Guards inspect carts more carefully. Bundles are opened, barrels tapped, and drivers questioned about roads, bridges, and armed travellers. A merchant complains that his cheese will freeze while officials debate his identity. The guard replies that frozen cheese is preferable to hidden weapons. Neither man seems persuaded. Above the gate, sentries watch the approaches. The landscape remains pale and still, but stillness now feels deceptive. Every distant figure attracts attention. A cart may carry grain, soldiers, messages, or all three. The Thames itself offers both connection and danger. Boats can move people and supplies, while river crossings become strategic points. Control of roads and waterways matters greatly when rival forces compete for castles. Windsor's defences will soon be tested. During the war, rebel forces will besiege the castle. Though the exact sequence and scale of events are reconstructed from chronicles and administrative traces that do not always agree. Some accounts emphasize determined attacks. Others provide limited detail, leaving later historians to judge what happened from incomplete descriptions. Memory favours dramatic walls and famous leaders, while routine preparation receives fewer lines. Yet preparation is what surrounds you now. Wood is moved under cover, water containers are checked, stable tack is repaired, messages leave through guarded gates. Servants receive instructions about extinguishing unnecessary lights and reporting unfamiliar faces. A boy is told to carry a sealed note to another building. He repeats the destination twice, then he runs. Near the wall, a group of labourers clears ice from a stairway. They scatter ash and rough sand across the steps. During an attack, a defender slipping on the frost could be as useless as one struck by an arrow. Winter has no allegiance. It troubles rebels and royalists equally. As afternoon fades, the castle becomes tighter around you. Doors close earlier. Conversations stop when strangers approach. A servant who joked freely yesterday now studies every passing face. You hear a rumour that someone inside has been sending information beyond the walls. No name accompanies the accusation, which makes everyone temporarily suitable. Suspicion moves quietly. It changes how people look at one another. The chapel bell sounds through the cold air, calling the households toward prayer. Some cross themselves immediately, others continue carrying weapons and supplies. Above, banners stir in a strengthening wind. Below, the castle waits behind guarded stone, unsure whether the next hoofbeats will bring allies, enemies, or another sealed warning. The winter darkness gathers, so does rebellion. You watch the last daylight withdraw from the walls as rebellion settles into rumour and routine. The sky deepens from grey to blue, then darkens beyond the roofs. One by one, lamps appear inside doorways, their small flames floating against the stone. Night does not fall gently inside Windsor. It arrives through cold passages, shuttered windows, locked gates, and the gradual fading of useful light. Servants hurry to complete outdoor tasks before darkness makes every frozen rut more dangerous. Guards climb towards the walls while others descend stiffly from their watch. The gatehouse changes first. Heavy doors are inspected, bars lifted into position, and chains tested beneath lantern light. A captain walks through the passage, checking each fastening with his own hands. The cold iron rings softly when struck. Once the entrance is secured, the castle feels smaller. Those inside become more aware of one another. Those outside become shadows beyond the defences. A late traveller may still gain entry, but only after challenge, explanation, and delay. You hear the gate bar settle into its brackets. The sound is final. Across the lower ward, stable hands finish watering horses and spread fresh bedding across the stalls. Dogs turn in circles before lying down. Chickens gather beneath shelter. While pigeons disappear into dark roof spaces, human beings prepare for sleep with greater ceremony and less success. In the hall, servants clear bowls, cups, bones, crumbs, and spill drink from the evening meal. Benches are moved aside, tables come apart and are carried toward the walls, opening space where lower household members may sleep. Rushes whisper beneath sweeping tools. Dogs investigate anything edible before it reaches the refuse basket. One hound discovers a crust beneath a bench and guards it as though defending the royal treasury. The hearth still burns strongly. People gather near it while they can. A soldier warms his hands before climbing to the wall. A kitchen servant dries damp sleeves. 2 pages sit shoulder to shoulder, too tired to continue their whispered conversation. The fire gives the hall a soft orange centre. Beyond that circle, the room fades into shadow. Light is expensive. Beeswax candles burn cleanly but remain costly, making them suitable for chapels and higher status chambers. Tallow candles are cheaper, smokier, and more strongly scented. Rushlights offer another humble source of illumination. Dried rush pith dipped in fat can burn for a limited period. Providing enough light for simple tasks, their flames are narrow and fragile. A servant carries one along the passage. The light touches the wall, then vanishes behind him. Darkness closes immediately around the space he has left. You follow the glow toward the sleeping chambers. The floor grows colder beneath your feet as you move away from the hall fire. Somewhere behind a closed door, a baby cries. Farther along, someone snores with impressive confidence. Beds are being arranged according to rank. A noble occupant sleeps beneath curtains, blankets, and perhaps fur. An attendant rests nearby, ready to answer a call during the night. Pages may share beds or pallets in an adjoining room. Servants settle wherever duty and space allow. Some lie on straw mattresses, others use benches, cloaks, sacks, or folded cloth for support. A few sleep close to doors because they must rise first. Sharing a bed is common and practical. Bodies conserve warmth. Bedding is valuable. Rooms are crowded. Modern ideas of private sleeping feel distant here. A bed may hold relatives, servants, guests, or companions without carrying the meanings later generations might assume. Winter makes physical warmth more persuasive than personal space. You enter a chamber where a maid closes the bed curtains around her mistress. The cloth traps heat and softens sound. A warming stone wrapped in fabric rests near the foot of the bed, though it will cool before midnight. The maid checks the shutters once more. Wind presses against them with a low moan. A strip of cloth stuffed into one gap trembles but remains in place. She touches the frame, feels the draught, and adds another fold. The room darkens when she snuffs one candle. Only a smaller flame remains near the bed. Fear of fire shapes the night. Candles, rushlights, braziers, dry hangings, timber roofs, straw, and bedding create constant risk. Before sleeping, servants inspect flames, move lamps from unstable surfaces, and cover embers where appropriate. Some hearth fires are allowed to decline slowly. Others must be maintained for warmth, cooking, or immediate need. Ash can preserve embers until morning, saving the trouble of creating fire again. A servant spreads ash carefully over glowing coals. Red light disappears beneath grey powder. The heat remains hidden. You return to the yard, where the night watch is taking shape. Lanterns sway near the gatehouse. Sentries move along the wall walks, their outlines briefly visible against the sky. The air has become painfully cold. Your breath hangs in front of you. Frost shines beneath the moon, and frozen mud feels hard as stone. Every sound carries farther now. A bucket knocks against a well frame. A horse stamps inside the stable. A door closes across the ward. Above, a guard calls to another along the wall. The reply arrives faintly from the darkness. Watchmen may use repeated calls to confirm that each post remains awake and secure. The exact wording used at Windsor has not survived for this particular night. Administrative sources reveal duties and personnel more readily than the ordinary phrases exchanged between tired men. You can still imagine the pattern. A call, a pause, an answer. Silence returns. The castle contains many silences, each with a different meaning. The chapel is quiet with devotion. The sick room is quiet with caution. The gatehouse is quiet with attention. The prison is quiet because the key is turned. You pass its guarded door and hear straw moving inside. Perhaps the prisoner is awake. Cold, fear, and uncertainty are poor companions for sleep. A guard sits nearby with a cloak around his shoulders. He has a cup of ale and a small lamp. In his hand rests a carved gaming piece. Though no opponent is present, he rolls it between his fingers. Some night workers believe that whistling after dark invites misfortune, wandering spirits, or unwanted attention. Others object mainly because the sound annoys sleeping officers. The result is the same. The guard does not whistle. Instead, he hums beneath his breath. You continue towards the chapel. His lamp remains burning, a tiny protected flame symbolizing sacred presence through the night. The smell of wax lingers near the entrance. A priest moves inside. perhaps completing prayers or attending someone who has requested confession. Religious duty does not always respect sleeping hours. Illness, fear, and political danger can bring people to the chapel after the household is settled. Beyond the chapel, the wind strengthens. It pushes smoke downward from a roof vent, spreading a bitter smell across the ward. Your eyes water as you turn away. The kitchen is quieter now, but never entirely still. A pot may remain near low heat. Dough may rest for morning baking. One servant sleeps close enough to hear if the fire changes. Food stores remain locked. Keys stay with trusted officers. Rodents ignore both hierarchy and curfew. You hear scratching behind a wall. A cat appears from the darkness and freezes beside you, listening. Its ears point forward. Then it disappears through a gap with silent purpose. The struggle continues. Near midnight, the castle reaches its deepest stillness. Most fires have weakened. Conversation has faded. Even the animals move less, yet Windsor is never fully asleep. A sentry walks above the gate. A groom checks a restless horse. A maid tends someone coughing in the sick room. A clerk wakes and remembers an unfinished message. The fortress breathes in layers. Warm breath gathers behind curtains. Cold breath drifts across the walls. Smoke rises, settles, and escapes through cracks. You stand in the lower ward beneath the dark bulk of the castle. High above, stars appear between moving clouds. The Thames lies unseen beyond the slope, though you sense its cold presence in the air. Then a sound comes from outside the walls. Hoofbeats. The nearest guard raises his lantern. Another calls toward the road. The gate remains closed while the rhythm approaches through darkness. Inside Windsor, sleepers stir. The hoofbeats approach the gate through darkness, slow enough to suggest exhaustion rather than attack. Guards call down from the wall, demanding names, allegiance, and purpose. The rider answers in a voice roughened by cold. A lantern is raised above the passage. The captain listens, confers with another soldier, then orders the outer barrier opened only far enough for one horse. Iron fittings scrape, chains tighten. Every movement sounds louder beneath the sleeping towers. You stand back as the traveller enters. He wears no noble colours, only a dark cloak crusted with frost. A leather message case hangs beneath his shoulder. His horse lowers its head immediately. Trembling through the flanks, the gate closes again. Nothing dramatic follows. No alarm horn sounds. No arrows appear. The messenger carries instructions for a royal officer, important enough to justify night travel, but not important enough to wake every chamber. Windsor settles once more. The horse is led toward the steed, where a groom wraps it in a rough blanket and offers warm mash. The messenger receives ale, bread, and a place near a guarded fire. He will speak again when the proper officials are ready. Until then, the castle returns to waiting. You remain in the yard as the black sky slowly pales. At first, the change is almost invisible. Roof lines separate from darkness. Towers become shapes rather than shadows. Frost begins reflecting a faint blue light. Dawn comes quietly in winter. A rooster announces it far too early, then repeats himself until the household begins accepting his opinion. Dogs stir in the kennels. Horses shift against their bedding. Somewhere, a servant coughs and reaches for cold boots. The Thames emerges below the castle as a muted strip of silver. Mist hangs over its surface, gathering between the banks and frozen fields. The river continues moving beneath the cold, carrying broken reflections downstream. Windsor's position above the Thames has long supported its military and royal importance. Roads, river routes, nearby settlements, and access toward London make the site valuable beyond its walls. Geography has shaped every cold night you have spent here. The new day begins with fire. Servants enter halls and chambers carrying kindling, ash baskets, and small lamps. Hearths are uncovered. Hidden embers are coaxed back to life. Smoke curls through rooms before warmth begins spreading. A maid kneels beside the same chamber fire you saw yesterday. She finds red coals beneath the ash and feeds them dry shavings. The first flame flickers, catches and steadies. Morning has begun in the kitchen. Bakers examine dough left near controlled warmth. Cooks stir pots, cut onions, and hand-prepare grain. Flour rises in pale clouds when a sack is opened. The smell of bread returns slowly. It moves through passages, mixing with tallow, smoke, damp wool, and stable air for those waking hungry. That scent is stronger than any bell. Water carriers gather near the well. Rope stiffened by frost must be worked loose before the first bucket descends. The winding handle groans as though objecting to another day. Nobody asks its permission. The bucket drops into darkness, fills and rises. Cold water spills across the platform. Ash is scattered over the ice. The next carrier steps forward. Every routine you have followed now joins the morning at once. Wood leaves the fuel store. Horses receive fodder. Guards exchange watches. Clerks open chests and unfold messages. Servants carry warm water toward private chambers. The castle appears to awaken naturally. It does not. It is awakened by the boor. You cross the lower ward while pale sunlight reaches the upper walls. The cold remains severe, but light changes its character. Frost no longer belongs only to darkness. It sparkles along roof edges and wooden rails with deceptive beauty. A stable boy stops beside you, holding a bucket in each hand. He looks toward the brightening sky for one breath, then continues toward the horses. He has work to finish. Near the gatehouse, soldiers question the night messenger again, his route, contacts, and seal are examined carefully. Political uncertainty has trained everyone to distrust convenience. The contents of his message remain private. Perhaps it concerns supplies, troop movements, a neighbouring lord, or another castle's loyalty. Such documents often disappear unless preserved through official archives or later copies. Most urgent words are eventually lost. The winter itself leaves uneven evidence, too. Chroniclers may mention storms, frozen rivers, military hardship, or interrupted travel. Account rolls record purchases and payments. Archaeology reveals structures, waste, tools, and altered walls. Yet no source preserves every sensation. No document records the exact smell of one smoky chamber at a dawn. No clerk notes the ache in a laundress's fingers. No chronicle follows a dog searching beneath a table for crumbs. Those details must be approached carefully. They are built from wider knowledge, physical evidence, surviving custom, and the ordinary needs of human bodies. History becomes most vivid where certainty and imagination meet without pretending to be identical. Peculiar little ritual survives among the servants this morning. One boy touches the gate timber before beginning an errand beyond the walls. He does it quickly, perhaps for luck, perhaps from habit. Another boy copies him. Neither explains. The gate captain notices but says nothing. He has his own habits. Before each watch, he checks the same buckle twice. Even when the leather is plainly sound, people trust routines when larger events feel uncontrollable. Outside the walls, King John's struggle with the rebel barons continues. Magna Carta has not brought lasting settlement. War will shape the months ahead. And Windsor will face siege, the castle will endure. That broad outcome is known. Yet the experience of those inside remains harder to recover. Accounts disagree on details, while later retellings often sharpen uncertainty into confidence. The number of attackers, the sequence of pressure, and the feelings of ordinary defenders resist perfect reconstruction. You can still sense what preparation means. More arrows are stored near the walls, grain is counted again, firewood is protected. Horses remain ready, suspicion becomes part of daily conversation. Yet life refuses to become only military. A child laughs when a chicken escapes across the yard. A cook argues about onions. A priest speaks gently with an anxious guard. A groom scratches a horse beneath the jaw. The castle contains fear, but also repetition, humour, fatigue, affection, and appetite. You walk toward the gate as morning strengthens. The great doors open for a cart carrying wood and sacks of grain. Guards examine the driver before allowing him through. Beyond the passage, the road descends through frozen fields. You pause beneath the heavy beams and look back. Smoke rises from Windsor's roofs. Servants cross the ward in steady lines. Soldiers stand above the walls. Bells. Animals, tools, and voices combine into the sound of a place continuing. The coldest winter has not stopped the castle. It has revealed how the castle survives, not through stone alone. Stone blocks wind, supports towers, and resists attack. Survival comes from hands carrying water, tending fires, baking bread, mending leather, watching roads, and comforting the sick. It comes from shared beds and guarded stores. It comes from practical skill. It comes from endurance repeated until it becomes ordinary. You step beyond the gate and feel the full wind again. The road shines beneath frost, leading toward the river valley and the pale horizon. Behind you, the doors begin closing. The last view is not of a king. It is of a servant carrying wood toward a fading fire. The road beneath you grows quieter as Windsor recedes into the winter morning, its walls soften behind mist, and behind, becoming pale shapes above the Thames. Smoke rises slowly from the roofs, then thins into the brightening sky. You no longer hear the kitchen doors or stable chains clearly. The hammer has fallen silent with the distance. Even the chapel bell reaches you only as a gentle vibration across the fields. Your steps become slower. The frost remains beneath your boots, but its sharpness feels less urgent now. You imagine warmth continuing behind the walls, gathered in small rooms where curtains close, embers glow, and tired people rest whenever duty allows. The messenger sleeps beside a guarded hearth. The groom leans against a stall after feeding the horses. The maid folds one final blanket before warming her hands. Above them, a sentry watches the road, wrapped tightly against the wind. He sees only quiet fields, silver river mist, and the faint path you leave behind. Soon, your footprints begin filling with loose snow. The castle keeps breathing. Fire becomes smoke, water becomes steam. Grain becomes bread, night becomes morning, then slowly prepares to become night again. The people inside do not know how future centuries will remember their walls. They know only the next task, the next bell, the next log placed carefully upon the coals, and now the scene fades. The towers grow smaller, the river grows still, the winter sky opens softly above you, wide and pale, while the road carries you away from guarded stone and sleeping fires. You breathe slowly. The cold air becomes quiet, the quiet becomes darkness, and Windsor rests behind you, held beneath frost, smoke, and the patient turning of time. Sleep well.